my normal assortment of excellent players. Last time, they travelled to a ruined tower in the Whalesong forest, which they explored, finding many strange and mutated creatures inside. They eventually discovered that, through various clues that they pieced together and things they found, that it appeared, for all intents and purposes, to have once been the domain of an ancient wizard who dwelt here before the great ice age that once engulfed Valconen. This wizard, unwilling to abandon the world and join the exodus heading south towards the equator, like the player character's ancestors did, decided he was going to try and find a way to adapt people to the new climate. And he'd created a sort of magical circle that when people were placed inside it, they were mutated. Presumably once this was guided by his magics, but now just seemed to like randomly mutate people. They found the charred corpse of said mage lying on the outskirts of the circle, so something had obviously gone wrong. However, his servant, a large bronze golem, was still following its previous orders to go out and capture subjects to put in this mutation chamber. The golem didn't directly interact with the players' characters. He just went out, grabbed a subject, brought it back to be mutated. As they left the tower, unfortunately Malcolm had been affected by the mutation chamber from having been in there, and he seemed to have acquired almost like sort of acne or sort of like scaly, like rough skin on his face, arms, legs, etc. So as they left without harm, they pondered what to do next. Brother Lomas seemed intent on the fact they had to stop the bronze golem. They couldn't just allow it to continue grabbing people at random and seemingly at random intervals as it followed this perhaps pre-programmed circuit through the Whalesong forest, grabbing anyone it saw. So we're going to pick up now with you guys effectively stood outside the ruined tower in the Whalesong forest. It's a fairly temperate day as far as things go in Valconen, although it's obviously still colder than it would be back in Roali, your home continent. But it's fairly temperate. We're still in Valconen's summer, for as we know, being up at the far north, Valconen only really has 2 seasons, summer and winter. It's fairly temperate. The sun's shining brightly. However, as you look up at the sun, you notice that unlike normal, there seems to be almost like a sort of fiery like corona around the sun, almost like a sort of halo or like a ring of fire that you can see as sort of like red, and occasionally you see like a little flare of it come out. Now, because occasionally I like sort of throwing things open to the players and getting your input on stuff like this, I thought I'd throw this open to you guys, because the corona was randomly generated by the calendar maker that I used from Don John. So I'm going to ask you guys, and obviously come up with this between yourselves, is this a normal thing to see, like this sort of ring of red fire around the normally yellow sun? Is it a strange or unknown thing? Is it like a portent? Does it happen at regular intervals? What do you guys think?
My initial thought would be that it's some kind of where you get maybe like another planet, what is it, a conjunction or something like that, where another planet in the solar system is kind of
aligned.
Yeah, so sort of moved in the way of the sun, and you're seeing the light sort of bleeding around.
Yeah,
the
like
edge.
maybe, I don't know if behind or in front. I'm not really up on all that stuff, but I wonder if it's some kind of
partial
astral alignment.
Okay,
yeah,
so talking eclipse.
Yeah, something like that maybe.
I'm fine with planetary conjunction. It's not going to be like a total eclipse because you can still see daylight, although the light will be slightly dimmed and it will have like a slightly reddish hue to it. So Collins came up with the idea that it's a planetary conjunction. So hey, that's fine by me, mate.
I'll retrospectively Google it.
Hey, that's all right, mate. It's all good. So to the rest of you guys, if someone wants to shout up, do these planetary conjunctions happen often? as we know, such things in sort of actual history were often seen as signs or portents of things. What do the rest of you reckon? Or is it just like something that happens like every now and again?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have thought it would have been, if it is that's causing it, it would be on a cycle of some sort, whether it be so many months or once a year or once every 10 years or I don't know. I think that's up for discussion how often it happens. But
obviously for us, sort of out of character, we know that like these things happen because of planetary orbits and stuff like that. But for people living in the setting, who probably aren't up on like their astrophysics and stuff like that, how would the sort of like the people of the world see it? So we know like back in medieval times, like an eclipse could be seen as like a sign of like doom or something like that.
Oh no, I'm just saying that because of what's causing it, it would be regular, but they wouldn't know why it was regular.
Yeah, man. Imagine not knowing why all that stuff happened. I mean, these guys, they must have been such dummies.
They're scared of their own shadows, really.
They know nothing compared to us astrophysicists.
Like this is yeah.
Yeah, we got that
You
down.
really put them guys to shame, man.
So I mean, would it be connected to the whole freezing over, all the ice?
Oh yeah, it could be a super long. It could be a super long cycle, like.
Yeah. Okay. So why didn't we say that like the last time this happened was like when the sort of ice age happened?
Yeah, when it came.
Okay.
So then that would mean that we have absolutely no idea what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we don't even know what this is. Like we don't know why it's happening. We don't know what this. There's no social events tied to this at all.
No.
And is this the first day, or is it sort of been building up slightly?
This is the first day that it sort of happened.
Okay.
And in fact, it may have been happening a short while before, but obviously you guys were like in the tower. But obviously now, at the start of the game, you're all stood outside the tower. You're in the Whalesong forest. You've been discussing a little bit what you want to do. You've all sort of like noticed that the light has this strange, sort of slightly reddish hue to it. And when you look through one of the gaps in the canopy, you can see this sort of like the sun appears to like dimmed, but there's like this red sort of fiery like ring around the edge of it.
Probably only Brother Lomas might have heard of it. I suspect that we would be a bit ignorant to this.
I don't know if you'd have heard of it, but I mean, he's gonna be obviously putting connections together with Leander and some sort of godlike event.
But presumably Lomas is the more learned of our throng.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the context being, of course, like Friar Tuck. we're not we're not talking.
He's
I mean,
educated
he's like
in
the
food,
brightest. He's the
drink,
brightest star on a cloudy night, isn't he? Really?
Yeah, it's like if you want someone to like go like, oh, I can make you like an amazing like brew using these herbs and stuff like that. He's all over it. You
Or
want
a
someone to be
BLT,
like, you want
anything
someone
like
to be like, oh, who can use these herbs or find a natural remedy for some ailments in the village. He's all over it.
Yeah.
Talk about Leander again, all over it. Astrophysics,
Not so much.
Ancient world-shattering magic.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
You say
those classes.
you say to Brother Lomas like, oh, make me like a banging keg of mead. He's on it. You say to him like, how do the planetary alignments work? He'll be like, oh.
Sun comes up from there, goes down there. You work in the between.
Okay, so it's over to you guys to discuss what you're doing about the current situation. You stood outside the tower. Like I say, it's a temperate day. There's a very gentle wind blowing. Over to you guys.
So,
How
what are
tall
we gonna?
is the golem? Sorry, just before we start, how tall is the golem?
The golem's about sort of 7-8 feet tall.
Okay.
So that's all I was going to say. What are we going to do about this golem? We can't just have this thing wandering the forests, picking up people.
No. I wonder.
I was concerned you was going to say that.
Are you not concerned?
Not so much.
What was you to learn that one of your fellow dwarven companions?
There seems little danger of that. They're not
Come
that
forward.
stupid. I mean, if a big bronze man come walking towards you, you walk in the opposite direction. It seems quite straightforward. But admittedly, there will be simpletons that fall prey to this creature, and
We must remember the
if
bear.
it bothers you,
and
Sorry, Malcolm, what was you saying?
I said we must remember the creatures that are created and the damage that they cause.
I will say, guys, but by the time you've been having a bit of general discussion, you've been like looking at the sun and stuff like that, roughly like half an hour has passed since you've left the tower. You've seen no sign of the golem emerging from the tower since, for all you know, it's still stood back in its original position where it went to after leaving the chamber, and it seemed to pay you no mind at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you folks have perhaps got a plan, I'm happy to assist, but
Why don't we dig a hole outside the door?
like a pit,
Yeah.
maybe put some spikes in it.
No, I don't think the spikes are going to do the trick.
I think spikes always do the trick in my experience.
But if we, because I don't know how agile it is, I don't think it gets out.
Oh, that's not an agile creature there, Malcolm.
No. So
Years of experience tell me that bronze creation is none too agile.
So if we can get it to fall into the pit.
Classic
just
rope
cover it
across the entrance, a trip it up. Mm.
And then come back and cover it up and cover it in. And
That's a big old hole we're talking
it
about.
It is. But
What do we think our chances are of digging such a hole without the correct equipment?
well, we're not that far from the village to get the correct equipment.
I've got my trusty pick here, and
Yeah, Leo is a good man for digging the pit.
yes, don't you worry about that. I dug many a hole in my time.
We
Um,
shall. Yeah, we shall help you get out of the hole because it will need to be quite deep.
What makes you think you won't be in the hole too, Mr. Lomas? You will be on bucket duty shoveling out the spoil whilst I loosen up the soil with my pick.
Okay, so is the general consensus, guys, that you're going to like basically dig a big pit for the golem?
I think that is our only and best
Okay.
current solution.
So how many of you are like doing the digging, basically?
I think 3 and someone, the last person is kind of half listening for the golem and half looking out for other creatures that might be either coming down from the tower or approaching from outside.
Okay.
Basically standing at the door.
Yeah. But not quite.
Okay.
Well, we
So-
probably have the door open so we get alerted a little bit earlier.
That's fine. Yeah, you can open the door. So I'm going to ask Leopold, since you appear to be like leading the digging efforts as like a stalwart dwarf.
Yeah.
Can you roll me a D3?
A 1.
Okay. So with Leopold leading the efforts and with his expert dwarven skills, you know, like picking like the right place to dig and like giving you the best advice on getting like bigger stones out and whatever, it takes you 10 minutes to like dig a sufficient hole, with 3 of you all sort of pitching in and a 4th like lifting the rubble out and stuff. So at the end of that, so if you're involved in the digging, just like raise your hand so I know who's like actually like. Okay.
I guess it's Weimar's me or you keeping watch. What do you reckon? Then I'll probably dig because I'm quite keen to see the creature stop. So then if you keep watch.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's me.
so we're basically saying it's Malcolm, Brother Lomas and Leopold digging, are
Yep.
we?
Yeah.
Okay, so you at the end of this 10 minutes, you 3 are like at the bottom of the hole. You've dug the hole. Weimar, you're sort of like keeping a bit of a lookout. So I'm going to make a quick roll to see if anything appears while you're doing that. So we are in the Whalesong Forest. Let's have a cheeky little roll that.
Cool.
Okay. So, Weimar, as you're sort of digging away, you hear just sort of in the distance coming over the trees, and roll me a d6 to see if you're surprised. Anything but a 1, you're not surprised. I will likewise roll for the creature.
Aha.
Okay, so none of you are surprised. So as you're sort of watching, keeping an eye out, you hear like this sound of huge sort of flapping wings. So like, and as you look up, you see this large shape seem to momentarily blot out the sunlight as it flies over the canopy, and you see what looks like a large, chitinous, crab-like creature, you know, the like large claws, 6 legs, the lot. However, sprouting from the sides of its sort of armoured carapace are what appear to be like large, leathery, hairy, almost like bat-like wings. And it appears to be sort of flapping its way, not directly towards you guys, but like it sort of heading so close that it's like obviously gonna spot you.
How far is it?
Okay. Well, handily, I can make a roll for that. So can you roll me 4d6, please?
$16.
Okay. It is 160 feet away, give or take.
I will, because we've apparently now finished with the digging part.
Yep, you have your 3 friends are still sort of down in the hole, and you're sort of like on the edge, like keeping a look.
I have my grappling hook and my 50 feet of rope. Hook on the end, rope down, like get up. There's a flying creature coming. And I motion like towards the tower, maybe, to get inside there.
Okay, yeah. So
that sounds like a good idea.
So Weimar lowers like his grappling hook and rope down, enables you all to like quickly scramble out the hole, and he's like, "Someone come in!" Like gestures at the open door of the tower, like, "Get in."
Yeah, I'm getting straight up that rope.
Okay, no problems. As you all jump into the doorway, you're not gone properly in, but you're like in the doorway of the tower. As you watch, you see this crab-like bat-winged creature flying over the trees. It doesn't seem to be paying particular attention to you. As you watch a small bird of the normals, like a chaffinch or something like that you'd expect to see in a sort of woodland, is sort of flying across. The crab creature's like claw snaps out, sort of grabs this bird as it's flying past, and then pretty much just like shoves it into its mouth as it's sort of flying, and then it just like continues to fly past. And after a few moments, it's lost to sight as it sort of like flies over where you are.
Have we seen anything like that before?
Well, actually, you've seen large crabs, and that's what it looks like, except for the fact that it's got like these like huge bat wings. But you've not seen anything like that before. You like flying crabs.
So it does look super like a crab.
Yeah, the whole body, the carapace, the claws, everything is a crab, and then it basically just looks like someone's like glued 2 giant bat wings onto it. Like the bat wings are sort of like leathery and sort of grey and furry, like bat wings would be, but just bigger. Whereas the crab is all sort of like your normal sort of armour, chitinous hide. So like the 2 sort of like parts don't go together. It's like someone's just taken 2 parts of an animal and sort of glued them together and then gone.
Yeah, it's like one of these mutations out of this tower type of weirdness.
Yeah.
Indeed, this is what we need to put an end to. This
Oh,
horrible
brother
mutations.
Lomas, we've dug the pit already. We've dug the pit.
As you're
Not
saying
before
that,
time.
suddenly there's a... and something very small drops out of the sky and lands just to like your right, Leopold.
Oh.
Onto the floor with a slightly wet thumping sound.
I like look across.
Okay, you look down and you see the small chaffinch that the crab creature had grabbed. However, when you look at it, it's almost like all the fluids have been like drained out of it. It's like desiccated and like withered and like shrunken up.
Oof.
But like it's not been like eaten, but it's like someone's like stuck a straw in it and like sucked all the fluids out of it.
Yeah. I just
Juiced it.
kick it with my foot into the pit. Ugh.
Yeah, you hoof it into the pit. Again, it lands with a slightly wet, sort of feeble slap on the bottom of the pit.
Oh. And did we get any sense of where it came from?
Not really, because obviously you guys were in the pit.
Weimar
just sort of like spotted it as it sort of, because obviously it's quite difficult to see the air because there's like quite a lot of tall trees. He only really spotted it as it went across a gap in the canopy, but it seemed to be coming from like maybe like the northwest, based on the direction it was going in. So you know that like the Whalesong forest like continues up to the northwest, so presumably it had just come from like a different part of the forest or like much further afield. You haven't really got a way of telling.
Yeah, a bit more maybe from the mountains or something.
Yeah, perhaps.
Well, Brother Lomas, like you say, perhaps this thing is better. Well, there's not much argument. This nonsense will be best put to an end.
So can we, once we think this thing's flown past, can we try and cover the pit? I don't know if this golem thing has got any sort of sense of self-survival and might try and jump it, or
I'll cut down a couple of trees. I'll cut some young spruce or some softwoods.
There's plenty of it about. I mean, you're in sort of like a coniferous forest, so most of the trees are fairly thin and sort of flexible. So yeah, there's plenty of material about to do that, and you've got the tools.
Yeah.
So
knock a few of them down and lay them over the top of the pit. That should fool this dumb creature.
Yeah. So with all the like dodging the creature, finding the right trees, cutting it down, covering over the pit, all of that probably takes like another half an hour. So you spent like an hour doing this whole thing so far. But at the end of it, you've got all these like spruces and leaves and fronds laid over as a makeshift covering to this pit.
Yeah,
you've seen no sign of the golem yet.
The door. Yeah,
that's fine. What are you attaching the rope to at either end? Because obviously, presumably, you're going to fasten it to something.
If we got enough rope, I think maybe just like take it around the tower. If not, drive. Like rake out some of the mortar out of one of the joints in the stonework and drive a timber peg in.
Well, how much rope have you guys got?
Sure,
I don't. How big?
Yeah, I've got 50 foot.
Yeah, I've got 50 as well, but I'd like to keep it going forward.
Yeah, don't bother about it. I'll just drive in some pegs either side of the doorway, rake out the mortar.
You think you've probably not got enough rope to go around the whole like circumference of the tower. But yeah, so you're planning on just like effectively hammering spikes in the mortar, like between the stones.
Yeah, rake out the joints, cut some wedges in the softwood from the saplings, and just drive them into the stone. And then...
You are a dwarf. Roll me a d6. Anything but a 1, and you are grand.
Okay. Here you go.
Okay, yeah. So you get out your like pick and your various tools, and you like chisel away at some of the mortar enough to like hammer your spikes in, run the rope round them and across the doorway. Okay.
While Leo's doing that, I'd like to be investigating the snow that we found scattered all over the tower.
Okay.
Because we still never quite understood why that was happening.
Oh yeah, we were going to investigate some of the piles of snow, weren't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so I presume you're just like going into one of them that's like just on the inside, like near to the door. So I won't bother taking you to the map because we sort of like know roughly what's going on. Now you're looking sort of like slightly more closely at the snow. You notice it is snow, definitely. I mean, it's not difficult to identify, but you notice there's an odd sort of like slushy, like slimy sort of texture to it.
Okay.
But it is snow.
And if I dig through it, is it all the same texture all the way through?
the snow that's at the bottom appears to be slightly sort of drier, and as you're looking at it, you can see that like this slimy sort of, I suppose, coating, for want of a better word, on the snow is like very slowly sort of drying and almost like evaporating. So like as time's passing.
And if I try and smell the coating, does it smell like anything?
Yeah, it's got a very sort of bilious sort of smell to it, almost like, you know, like stomach acid or like bile. It's got like it's only very faint, but it's definitely there. I mean, you really have to like sort of get your schnoz close to it to smell it, but it is still there. If anyone's ever like witnessed someone being like not very well and being like sick, you know, that sort of, after you've cleaned it up, you know, there's still like a sort of faint smell of it that lingers around. It's like that.
Okay. And are all the snow piles the same? Okay.
Some of them don't have the smell, and they appear to like be just like normal snow. But given that you've seen that this like coating is like evaporating, it's possible they had it, but they've just been there longer and it's evaporated.
Okay. Can I try and light a torch and see if the coating is flammable?
Okay, you light a torch. The coating does not really appear to be flammable now. Okay. So obviously with all the pegging in and you investigating it, probably about another like 15 minutes has passed, all told.
Okay.
So while that 15 minutes is going on, is there anything like Brother Lomas or Wymore would like to do whilst Malcolm's investigating the snow and Leopold's like chiselling out mortar and hammering spikes in?
Yeah, I was going to assist Malcolm, or go, and I was quite curious as well to investigate. Does the snow melt when you put the fire to it? I mean, does it react?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. What you notice is when you put the torch like right next to it, the sort of coating seems to sort of like burn off first, but then the snow just starts melting like normal snow.
And I'm going to prod around in some of these piles of snow to see if there's something sort of covered up or been hidden beneath the snow.
Okay, not a problem. So you're sort of like poking around in the snow. So I'm going to ask, can you please roll me a d6?
D6. Yep. A 3.
Okay, so as you're sort of studying it, I mean, obviously you're more familiar with, like you say, like herbal medicine and like various common ailments, obviously sickness being like one of them. So as you're sort of looking at it, and you and Malcolm are sort of like poring over it and you're comparing notes and sort of talking backwards and forwards between each other, you're pretty sure that like you're not 100% sure, but you think maybe this snow has either been like like eaten by something and then like thrown back up, or maybe it's been produced as part of some sort of like digestive process, and that's why there's the strange sort of sickly smell lingering over it. But obviously after a while the sort of like the bile on it sort of evaporates and disappears, and then the smell goes with it.
And this is on all the different floors, wasn't it?
Well, you're out. Yeah, the snow was on all the different floors. Obviously, you're just looking at like piles near the door now.
Yeah. And that's where the spiders were, weren't they? These large.
Yeah, the spiders were sort of like a bit further in, but they were on the first floor. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't meet any other creatures that would sort of.
No, and obviously you guys explored all of the floors. The only place you didn't really go, because you sort of stuck your head up and went, "There's nothing here," was the roof. Because obviously you put your heads out the hatch and you were like, "It's a roof with some piles of snow. Never mind." And you carried on doing your business because you've got other pressing business at the time.
So do we think something else is living here then, potentially?
None of the creatures we've seen would be regurgitating the snow at this scale, right? Unless it's the golem.
I mean, it could be the golem, but you've seen no signs of it, and you think like Brother Lamus, if for all intents and purposes it's like a mechanical creature, these processes are clearly sort of organic, sort of digestive process. It's not possible. I mean, it's a mad mage. He could have built a golem that like vomits snow, but it seems a little bit unlikely given what he designed it for. And you've not seen any signs of any of the other creatures you encountered like vomiting snow.
And so on this ground floor, I haven't found anything in these piles of snow, any
No.
sort of remains or any sort of something being hidden.
Nope.
Okay. I don't know if we've got the time to investigate this further, or whether we are wasting our time and it is something that's.
But we can't go anywhere till the golem comes down the stairs, right?
Well, we don't know how long that's going to be either. That could be days or weeks even.
Yeah, you've no idea. Okay, so while you guys are having this discussion,
all I was going to say is I suggest we return on our way back to town to see if, we've been successful with our trap.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we could be waiting here for days.
Okay, so whilst you're suggesting that to Malcolm, Leopold's still like, Weimar, is there anything you want to do during that sort of like 15-minute period?
I'm stood off to the side, hand on the pommel, and I'm saying to myself, looking at the stellar phenomenon, is this something that you recognize?
The sword speaks to you, but this time it doesn't sort of speak through you, like you're just hearing the voice in your head. And it says, yes, it's happened before. Back in the days of the Solar Order, they believed it was a sign of a great disaster. They believed it was the Lord of Light briefly turning his face away from the world because he did not want to look upon whatever disaster was to follow. I can't say I really believe in all that myself, but yes, they were quite super for all their strong positive qualities. They were something of a superstitious lot.
Okay, anything to watch out for? Any curses I need to be aware of? Things not to do? Do I need to get salt, throw it over my shoulder? Is there anything?
It's like, wow, you're the voice in your head. Say, wow, I'm not sensing anything curse-like in the vicinity.
Well, that's brilliant. Can you let me know if you do?
Yes, of course.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Okay. That is very good information. He says, sort of glancing around, looking for any other phenomena, because we know that there's something going on with the sun, but he's scanning the rest of the sky, seeing if there's anything else going on.
Okay, you don't really notice any other phenomena beside for the fact that due to like obviously the sky is normally like bright blue in the day, but because of this like reddish tinge to light, the sky now has a slightly sort of deeper, almost purplish tone to it. And because the light levels are lower, you can actually see like a few sort of like pinpricks of light of like the brighter stars, which normally you wouldn't see during the day. But beyond that, you don't notice anything that particularly jumps out at you.
Right? Yeah. No, he's stargazing until we are finished with the.
Okay, so the 15 minutes has passed. You've got your spikes pegged in. You've got your rope across them. Brother Lomas and Malcolm have been investigating the snow, obviously being careful not to like trip over the rope. The pit's covered. Wymar's sort of like been stood to himself and sort of like looking up at the sky, but also keeping an eye out for anything that might appear to menace you. What do you guys want to do?
Do we continue our journey?
Yeah, I think we've done as much as is reasonable.
I suggest we return to check on our work at a later date.
But, yeah, it's on our way. I've got no problem with that.
Oh, and just an aside, forgive me guys, I forgot to write this in my notes last time. What did you guys do with like that skull ring that you found in the tower?
Yeah, I have it in my backpack.
Okay, no problems.
Didn't Malcolm actually put it on at one point? Did you? I can't remember now.
Well, it's entirely up to you. If you want to have put it on, you can do. If you don't, you don't have to have done it.
No, not.
I know. I honestly can't remember from last time. So
No, I'm wondering. I think that I put it on and nothing happened, so I took it off, and put it in my.
Well, that's possible because I know you went through that weird.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. You put it on and you were like, all right, I'll wait for a bit, see if I notice anything's happened, and then you were like, oh, nothing's happening. Right, take it off, put it in the bag. Yeah, that's fine. I remember now. Okay, so are you guys planning to head back to your home village of New Sealand?
Are we not pushing on to the fort?
Well, it's up to you guys. I mean,
How much time does it take to get back to the fort?
okay, let me just have a quick look. So you're talking it's going to take best part of like a couple of days to get to the fort.
Were we not going to the settlement
Pearson first, yeah.
on the
Yeah, but-
shore?
Coast.
Yeah, and it's going to take
I'm
you just
a little
over a day to get to the
cursed and
settlement.
sick.
Mm.
So, and we have a sage. So, I guess it depends on how long we're going to be and whether it escalates or it's just this is the level it's at.
And also, just to remind you guys, in case you've forgotten, it's been a while since we had a last session, you did arrange to meet with the bandits in Fort Eastbourne in 3 days. Now, it's going to take you 2 days to travel to the fort, or just over a day to travel back to your own village. So, if you got a hustle on, you probably could get back to the village and just about make it to the fort, but you'd be like pushing it.
Maybe let's just go to the fort and.
I think we go to the fort. I don't think. I think we'll miss them if we go back. We're not gonna.
Well, we could go via the village still, couldn't we? Because it'll still probably take roughly 2 days. Am I?
Well, no, the village is in the opposite direction. The village is
No,
like,
sorry, I ment the
No.
Deerson.
Oh yeah.
09.
Deerson is like approximately here, by what you've been told. So you could sort of swing around in an arc.
I'm just wondering if we could find something that maybe we could help aid Malcolm's ailments.
Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's go to Deersong and then we can go to the fort and meet the bandits and then see whether it escalates or it just.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do that. Let's do that. If Harpy is happy with that, we'll do that.
You estimate it's going to take like about 2.5, 3 days to like do the loop, so you should have time to do that, assuming like nothing happens in the interim, obviously. Okay.
If Malcolm's not happy with that, we'll do that anyway.
It's great to feel part of the team, Leo.
Okay, so obviously you guys are going to be travelling for some part of this through the Whalesong forest, so whoever's guiding you will need to make a roll to see if you get lost. The normal chance of losing direction in woodland is 2 in 6, but I believe Malcolm has a special ability related to that.
Yeah, so it's 2 and 12.
Yep, so go for it. Anything but a 1 or a 2 on a d12.
Ooh, we are
right,
lost.
okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is I'm going to ask you to roll me a d6. Like 1 is straight up, 2 is 3, 4, 5. You get the idea. Okay. Okay, so what happens is you spend a day travelling, so you'll need to like deduct a ration for each of you. You spend a day travelling, but unfortunately you've basically gone you've gone like a bit too far south. You've gone sort of southwest rather than like southwest. So you realise when you sort of reach the coast, and obviously you sort of like you're looking out to sea, and as you sort of look across this like inlet here that I'm trying to ping, you can actually see on sort of like on the other side of the inlet, you can actually see this village, but you've just come a little bit too far south. And like I say, it's taken a day, so you'll need to obviously deduct your rations. However, if you now want to follow the coast, you won't need to make a roll because you can't get lost following the coast.
I think that's safer in Malcolm's condition. He's obviously suffering somewhat, leading us a little astray.
Yeah, well, he's not looking at his best. Like I say, he's got this sort of scaly, like sort of skin condition. Okay, so
Been messing about with that funny coloured snow.
so you guys continue to follow the coast, or you don't have to make a roll to get lost. And as you're making your way along the coast, eventually you spy just sort of set in a little bit near a small copse of trees is what appears to be a very small village. It's like smaller than New Zealand, doesn't have the big like fortifications that you guys have built. And I'm going to share you a picture. I'm hoping you'll all be able to see that shortly when it loads up. And that is a very rough approximation of what the village looks like. And as you're sort of approaching the pathway on there, it's not really like a road, it's more like a sort of dirt path. And as you're sort of walking towards it, you can see maybe 8-12 people sort of doing the normal stuff you'd expect to see villagers doing, so collecting water. You can see some of them are carrying like buckets with shellfish in and fish. They're obviously they're on the coast. They've obviously been taking advantage of like the bounty of the sea. They've not spotted you. They've not got it's obviously not quite as sort of set up as your village is. They've not got lookouts posted or anything like that. So they're all
that is definitely stretching the definition of a village.
Yeah. To be honest, it's more like a small hamlet.
Yeah, that is proper small. Yeah.
So no one's on the lookout. So no one's seen you guys sort of approaching. You see this small village. It's no more than like half a dozen buildings, like just people walking around, milling around, doing their own thing. What do you guys want to do?
I'd like to approach someone and see if there's anyone that may be able to, like I say, aid with herbs or sort of ointments or something to try and help Malcolm's condition.
Okay, as you're sort of approaching, you see what appears to be a young woman who's sort of like the nearest person to you as you're approaching the village, basically. And as she's sort of walking along, you can see she has like a leather satchel tucked under one arm, and she has like what look to be like a number of like scrolls, but they're like really long. They're like about that long, with like twine around them. So like like 3 or 4 of them like under her arm, and this bag under her other arm, and she's sort of bustling towards one of the buildings. As you're approaching, she sort of like she looks up and sees you, and she's like she goes, "Oh," and she seems like a bit surprised, like they don't really get many visitors. And then she sort of like stands there, sort of like almost like she doesn't really know what to say. Like she looks a bit awkward.
May I assist you? You seem overladen with items.
Obviously, she sees you're wearing like the recognisable monk's robes that everyone would instantly recognise, and she says, thank you, Father. If you wouldn't mind, these supplies," and she sort of like jiggles the leather pouch a bit, are quite heavy, and she's trying to like pass over to you, but she hasn't really got a hand for it. If you wouldn't mind just taking these, and she's like sort of pushing like the parchments towards you. Yes, I'd greatly appreciate it. You take them off her, and she sort of like she's able to like hold the bag with like both hands, and she says, we don't get many people coming to Dear Son. Do you mind if I ask where you hail from, Father? And then she sees the rest of you guys like obviously coming up behind Brother Lamb. She says, and friends as well.
Yes, me and my companions are from New Zealand.
She sort of like she looks puzzled, and she's like, "Oh, there's another village down the coast. I assume you mean a village down the coast."
Yes, I don't know if you know the river that runs north from the coast.
I'll be honest with you, I've not been very far from Dearson. I mean, as you can see, it's only a small, recently founded settlement, so most of our efforts have gone into shoring things up here rather than exploring. We did have a group of soldiers and the like who originally came over with us, and I know they pressed on to explore the rest of the island. Well, all but one of them, and but we haven't seen them since. They went their own way. One of their number, she said, Ariana, she said she was going to stay behind, and she said her days of adventuring were done, and she was going to remain with the village and make sure the village was safe. But the rest of them carried on to the island, but we've not seen them since.
Yeah, I mean we're similar. We're trying to grow our small village, or hamlet, you may call it. So yeah, we're in a similar position. Maybe in the future we'd be able to trade some goods, or
Well, yes,
come closer together.
I'm not really the person to speak to about that, but yes, I'm sure our alderman would be interested in that. I mean, obviously, anything we can do to make things easier for ourselves here and make our chances of lasting longer. At which point, can I ask you to roll me a D4, Brother Lomas?
D4 is indeed. That would be a 1.
Okay, so she says, yes, I was just doing some painting on the coast. The scenery around here is quite spectacular, but unfortunately, because of the light, and she sort of gestures up at the sun, it's been quite impossible for me to carry on painting. So I'm heading back. And then she stops like mid sentence, and you notice her eyes seem to fall onto Malcolm, and she sort of like she peers past you at him, and she says, yes. And then she sort of leans round, Brother Lomas. She says, excuse me, sir, but I don't mean to sound forward, but have you ever had your portrait painted? You have quite a striking angular look to your features.
Oh, here we go.
No. No, I never have.
Well, if you
Obviously, hadn't had a close look.
if you ever find the time, or you have the time, I mean, it can take quite a while with these things, and you would wish your portrait painting, I would be more than happy to do so.
Perhaps another time.
Of course, then she turns back to Brother Lime and she says, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. In the excitement of new people, I quite forgot myself. My name is Trix."
Brother Lomas, and these are my friends Malcolm, Leopold, and Weimar.
And she sort of nods at you all in greeting.
I was actually my friend Malcolm there. You mentioned. I was actually looking to see if anyone would be skilled in herbs, or maybe even someone from a sort of church background or something may be able to assist with
She
an
says,
ailment.
"Well, we do have our priest, Aben. He's she gestures at one of these buildings, and all the buildings are like, well, let's say if Leopold was like assessing the construction quality, he would not be a happy chappy. Like, they're not great. They're obviously not skilled masons or woodworkers or anything like that. And all the buildings are pretty much identical. There's basically like 6 or 7 sheds. It's like the buildings in this. She gestures one of these identical buildings. She says, "Yes, he's using that. It's not much of a church. I mean, but like I say, we're only recently settled. It's the best we've been able to do so far. We hope to make it grander in time. That's one of the reasons I've been trying to do so much painting. I hoped I could produce some work that might liven up the church and make it seem a brighter place for the Leander worshipping. But there's been other things that have claimed my attention so far. But yes, if you wish to see Aben, I can quite happily take you across and introduce you."
Well, let's take these things back to your building.
Thank you.
The wood rights of my people would make it a brighter place by putting a torch to it. He says under his breath.
Okay, right.
So it's shonky.
Roll me a D6.
Shonky construction.
Roll me a D6 on a 1. She hears you.
That made me bust out that silence again.
There you go.
She doesn't hear you.
Yeah.
And you head over to one of these small buildings. You see that they're like communal buildings. It's not like one person per building, rather like your own village. Although this is basically like the sort of diet caffeine-free version of your village.
It's all been put together with grit, Phil, and
exactly. You get the feeling that unlike your village, which was lucky you were quite lucky with your village. You had like trained people like carpenters and blacksmiths and whatever as part of your like crew. Whereas you get the idea that like these people who came across were just like your basic sort of like peasant settlers, and they've just sort of like had to make do with what like basic skills they've got. I mean, they've done the best they can, bless them, but like it's not brilliant. And you go across this wooden building, you help her put all of her stuff in, and then she she leads you to a pretty much identical wooden building. Say that you can see sort of over the door, there's like a small like wooden plaque. Basically, it's like a bit of a plank that has like very crudely chiseled into it, like the symbol of Leander. But it's like someone's done it with like a whittling knife, like out of an old plank they found, and just like hung it over the door.
This is painful. We need to get out of here as soon as possible.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'll still give the old sort of cross as I see that and enter the little.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel much
she
the same.
does
If I was
likewise.
a religious man, I'd be crossing myself too.
She knocks on the like the wooden door of the building, and in a sort of slightly nervous voice, she says, "Father Abin, and you hear a voice inside say, "Yes, what is it?" He says, "Oh, well, we have visitors from another settlement, Father Abin. They want to speak to you." The door opens, and you see a tall, quite severely featured man stood there, and he's wearing like quite sort of fine like clerical robes that look very at odds with the sort of like rustic surroundings he's in. Effectively, he's like in the cleric's like Sunday best robes, all like white and sort of yellow like fabric and stuff like that. He's got like a silver cross hung around his neck, like bracelets, the lot. Comes walking out, and he's like, well, it's good to see a visitor, friendly folk. I am Father Abin, I suppose the religious head of this village, such as it is. What can I do for you?
Unfortunately, we do not have a lot of time as we're travelling north, but my friend has come under somewhat of an unfortunate illness, and I was just wondering if you may be able to assist with some sort of soothing ointment or some herbs to maybe ease his uncomfort.
He sort of peers quite intently at you, Brother Lomas, and then he says, "What? Forgive me for asking. I know you're pressed for the time, but what order of the Church of Leander do you hail from?" Now, obviously, you don't. You're a friar. Like clerics have orders, friars don't. You're like from a monastery.
I'm a sort of roamer, I guess. Yeah. So, no, I'm not from a specific order. I'm from a very small settlement, but I have a strong faith.
He's like,
to Leander.
So you're not exactly a real priest then.
How about the ointments then?
Yeah, Weimar in like a sort of like blunt force diplomacy is like, ointments, eh?
I'm glad he said that. I was about to pipe up myself.
That was entirely my intent. Is like, get in there first.
Yeah.
I've got to cut off the dwarf.
Yeah, the clock is ticking. I need to get in.
Okay.
I'll see what he's.
I'll just point.
Okay, so he says, well, I don't have any ointments or things like that. I rely on my faith in Leander rather than these, and he sort of very slight sort of like sneer on like the corner of his mouth, rather than these witches' brews and pagan superstitions and all of that. But he says, I'll see what Leander can tell me, and he walks over. He walks over and he says, which one of these? And then he sort of sees like Malcolm's face, and he's like, He walks over, stands facing you, so he's like opposite you, Malcolm, and he puts both of his hands on your shoulder, makes like a cross sign in front of you, and then he takes his hands off your shoulder and holds his hands up in prayer, and he says, Leander, with your blessings, allow me to pierce through the veils of blindness and deception, and perceive what ailment vexes this person, your servant. And as he's doing that, he opens his eyes, and you can see that like his eyes appear to have like rolled back into his head, so you can just like see the whites of his eyes. And he peers you, and then he like staggers back a few paces, sort of like raising a hands to his head, and he says, he recovers himself, like the artist rushes to help him, and he's like, no, I'm fine. Just takes a toll, and he sort of stands up a little bit straighter, and he says, well, I'm afraid I don't think I can help you, my fine fellow. The ailment that afflicts you is some form of foul sorcery, quite beyond the skills of normal medicinal herbs to solve. And I'm afraid I have no truck with such devilry and witchery. My apologies, my child, but I'm afraid there is little I can do for you. A more practiced priest than myself may be able to call on the blessings of Leander to purge you of this sinful enchantment that lies about you. But alas, I fear that I am not able to do so.
Yeah, I told you Leander wouldn't have a clue.
Well, we thank you for your time, and we'll be on our way and trouble you no more.
Oh, no trouble at all. It is the will of Leander that you have came here, and I trust to Leander to guide me and to keep you safe on your journey.
Mm-hmm. Leander will guide us out the door presently.
Goddamn sorcery!
Start, like ushering people, like we.
I imagine Leopold's like, and you're like pulling him out the door. Yep. So you all sort of exit the building.
A
leaving
bunch
the
of holy shit! What?
Are you guys leaving the village, or are you exploring the village more? It's up to you.
I'd like to find this Ariana, the adventurer who stayed behind.
Okay,
That exploration will take us all of 2 minutes, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't take you very long. You pretty much have to walk between the buildings, and eventually you do. It takes about 5 minutes. Eventually, you come across what appears to be a slightly older woman. She has white hair, pulled back in quite a severe ponytail. You can see she's wearing leather armor. And she's actually sort of sharpening a sword with a whetstone as you approach. She doesn't pay you any mind as you're approaching. She's just sort of kneeling down, sort of bracing this whetstone, and you can see a few sparks sort of coming up from the blade, which has got a few notches in it, so it's obviously been used a lot, and she's giving it the old resharpening this blade.
Okay. So I'll just clear my throat and try and get her attention.
She looks up, doesn't say anything, but she looks at you.
Ariana, I believe. I'm wondering if you were a companion of Jebediah and the Delvers of the Twin Knights.
She seems to relax a bit when you say that, and she smiles slightly and says, "Yes, I was. Well, in fact, I used to lead the Delvers of the Twin Knights company, but I was already thinking about setting my adventuring days behind me. I'm getting a bit long in the tooth for that sort of thing, and well, when we agreed to protect these settlers as they travelled from Rohaleen, when the rest of the Twin Delvers Company wanted to push on further into Valconan to explore it more, I decided to remain behind and offer what little advice and help I could to the people of Deersun and protect them as best I could. Well, we've only had a few excursions from various animals and such like, which have been no real difficulty so far.
Okay. Yes, we have come across. We bumped into your old companions northeast of here a number of days ago.
And how are they faring? As you can imagine, given the distances and the lack of reliable news, we've heard nothing of them since they left Deersun. I'd at least like to know they're okay.
They were well when we left them.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Leander be praised.
Indeed. Yeah, so we met Jebediah and Moss and Eliza and Simon Durand and the dwarf, who was almost as grumpy as my friend here.
She laughs when you say that, and she says,
"Are you forgetting the dwarf's name, Malcolm? Did you forget the dwarf's name?"
She laughs when you say that, and she says,
forgot the dwarf's
she
name.
says, yes,
No, Giles McCurdy. I do
She
have
says, McGurdy is something of an acquired taste.
You're making it up.
Giles McCurdy.
They all look the same, don't they?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Bring it, yeah.
And then
Keep it coming. I've heard it all before.
Then the white-haired woman turns to look at you, Leopold, and in Dwarven, she says, and how are you finding Valkonen, Master Dwarf?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I think there is much to be discovered. There is promise. Yes, interesting. The ancestors have left their mark here, and I'm keen to learn more. And yeah.
She switches back to common.
I trust you're well. I trust you're well yourself, and you're finding some rest here in this village.
Yep, she switches back to common, no doubt for the benefit of the rest of you. And she says, yes, I'm doing passably well, thank you, Master Dwarf. As I say, I've been a soldier for many years, fought in many campaigns, and it's getting to the time where I'm thinking that, if not of laying down my sword, at least the burning fires of youthfulness have dimmed slightly, and I feel myself more ready to make a permanent home for myself. I think my days of roving the wilderness are behind me now, but at least I can still be useful for these people here in this village.
So assuming that no one else outside the party can hear us, sorry, excuse me. Ariana, I wanted to speak to you very quickly. We have come across a number of secrets in our journey.
I see.
We believe that the Ice Age was caused by wizards who fled from a terrible evil, and that evil lives beneath the ice and is coming to life, or thawing.
She gets a very sort of serious, like grave sort of expression on her face. She says, well, obviously I've heard the ancient legends that the Valkonen mages caused the Ice Age, but I've not heard any of these other things you're telling me, but it is troubling indeed.
It is. So we believe that when the ice melts, that this creature that they call the smoking mirror will rise. So back into Valkonen. So I think that you should...
If you don't mind me asking, sorry to interrupt you, what manner of creature is this smoking mirror?
We are told that it is a god that is older than Leander.
She like raises her eyebrows when you say that.
Now, they're legends, ancient scripts. You know, the words that they use and the words that we use, they may not mean the same thing. I
entirely understand, but that there is often at least a gem of truth in these old myths and legends.
There is. So I wanted to warn you as a soldier and with people under your protection, you might focus on protecting your village, and also to let you know that we have started to protect our village, and should the worst come to the worst and you're forced to flee, that you would be welcome to join us in New Zealand behind our walls, and our we have hired a number of guards to protect us. So should the worst come to the worst, please know that you are welcome to seek shelter from us.
As well, that's very much appreciated, and I shall certainly speak to the alderman of Dear Son and advise him that perhaps we might wish to to redirect ourselves from focusing on more buildings to more firmly defending the area that we currently have. So,
do
thank
you, do you have boats?
He says, we have a few rowing boats, nothing
Seaworthy.
nothing seaworthy. No, like many settlers, we booked passage on another ship that brought us here, and whilst we have fishing boats, most of our food comes from the coast. We don't have any ocean-going vessels.
Do you know where the boats that bring people and goods to the forts, where did they dock? Because they must dock in a deep sea port of some description.
She says, yes, of course, you're right. I mean, obviously they can't actually go to the fortresses because they're inland. I believe, this is just what I've heard, I believe they dock about a day to the northwest of here. There's a cove that they use with a shallow incline heading up to the shore, and I believe it's the shortest route to the nearest fort, obviously Fort
okay.
Eastbourne.
But there's no village or hamlet or anything there. It's just a cove, is it?
As far as I'm aware, it's just a cove. Like I say, from what I understand, the main benefits it have is that, unlike here where you can see it's quite rocky and there's quite a steep drop to the sea floor, aside from a few small isolated paths that our fishermen used to head down there, I believe the cove that is used, it has a very shallow incline that is easier to transport cargo up using pack animals, etc.
Okay.
A
Very
safe
interesting.
harbour.
Precisely, Master Dwarf.
That's
Okay, well,
interesting.
You'll find us, if it comes to it, for safety, trade, merriment.
Oh, indeed,
Some description.
It is our hope that once we're more firmly established, we can start, and we're protected here, we can then start sort of ranging out and making contact with our neighbours. But obviously our primary concern at the moment has been make sure we've got enough buildings for us to live in, enough food to supply us, etc.
3 days that away is on the coast by the river, at the river mouth almost.
Thank you. I shall certainly attempt to, even if it is just myself, I'll certainly attempt to pay a visit to your village.
You would be most welcome.
Indeed.
And we will come and trade information or share any information we find. For we all must protect the innocents who rely on us.
I could not agree more. And although it is unlikely, because like I say, we are not travelling widely at the moment, if we do hear anything, we do a little bit of scant trade with Fort Eastbourne, mainly for supplies we can't get ourselves, but nothing of major import. But if we do hear anything, we will of course share what knowledge we do have with your village. As you say, it's in the best interest of all of us to make sure that we're as well protected and informed as we possibly can, particularly with this grave potential threat looming in the future that you are talking about.
Indeed.
Now, John, just to check, is the eclipse still going? Or...
Yep.
Yep. So Weimar will have been keeping an eye on the sky as we travel here and while we're here as well.
Yep, not a problem. Okay, so what do you guys want to do?
Johannes, is Weimar's like a hunter guy, yeah? Hunter trapper guy.
Yeah, his deal is sort of he was a bowman in the army, and afterwards, well, he has his bow, he has his arrows.
Yeah.
Gonna hunt.
Yeah.
All you can do. So he's not a pro like Harp is.
Okay.
He's sort of, well, it's what he does because he has to do something, and that's what he ended up doing. So he is a hunter by profession, but Harp is a professional.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
So you're a former military man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an archer that was like, well, what can I do? I can shoot a bow.
Yeah.
can try shooting animals.
Yeah, he's got, transferable skills or whatever.
Mhm, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
he's
Malcolm's
retrained
an
to enter a new
elven-
marketplace.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's taking like IT courses currently. And,
Yeah, I was a hunter, but I'm retraining for cyber.
yep. Cyber hunter.
But Malcolm's a proper like elven scout.
Yeah.
Woodsman.
Like Malcolm's a true woodsman, whereas I'm sort of like, well, I can make do in the woods, but
Yeah. Woodsman by necessity.
Yeah, like Wyman was saying, he was basically like, oh, I used to be a soldier. I'm no longer a soldier. What skills have I got that I can use to get by on? Well, I'm good at shooting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Gotcha.
Right. So, should we bid good day then to our new
Time
friend,
is
or-
of the essence, I believe.
Yes,
After
yeah.
our short
Yeah, I
delay.
mean, what sort of time of day are we at?
Something midday-ish.
Yeah.
Probably
we
try
should
and get
push-
to the fort by nightfall.
Yeah, you do know that it's going to take like approximately a day, roughly speaking, to get to the fort. So, based on where you've been told it is.
a day from now.
Yeah.
Well, we might as well stop here then, hadn't we?
I was just considering, would it be a safer, slightly longer route to avoid the sort of hills and the trees, and take a sort of
Yeah, I think so.
a safer route, but maybe take just over.
Well,
a
why
day
don't we go and check
day
out the
up there.
cove,
Yeah.
and then we can spend the night there. So that looks to be kind of halfway, and then
Yeah, let's head up. Yeah, let's head up to the cove with our half a day, and see if we can bunk down at the cove. Make
Yep.
camp at the cove, and then strike out to the fort the following day.
Yeah, safe harbor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
we're
and
hoping
then
it's there
we've
somewhere, I guess.
and then we've we've got somewhere a little bit secluded, and we're still within striking distance tomorrow of the fort.
Okay, so as you're heading for the cove, I'm going to ask you to make a sort of roll to see if you find your direction. So obviously, Malcolm, it's like you're going to fail on a 1 on a d12. Now, even if you fail, you will find it. It'll just take you longer because it's like a little sheltered like cove. You're not going to get lost because you're following the coast.
Malcolm, you are sacked, mate. You are so sacked. You are
Scales.
so sacked.
Yeah, we've got to
What
get
was
that
you saying,
treated,
Weimar? So you're not like the professional woodsman. We've got Malcolm for that because he's a proper hardcore elven scout wayfinder.
Ranger.
Okay, so you spend your half a day looking for this cove and you've not managed to find it after half a day. You're pretty sure you're in the right area.
Malcolm, how hard can it be? We follow the sea.
This is a really secluded cove, my friends.
Maybe this rumor is just not true.
Are we
That
there
is
yet?
also a possibility. So you
Are
guys
we
have
there
spent
yet?
you guys have spent half a day looking for it with like Leopold constantly asking if you're there yet.
Are we there?
Are you guys going to carry on looking for it, or
I
because
think
obviously
we
like
should
half
make
a day's
our way
passed
to
and
the
it's
fort.
starting to get dark now.
But
So it's
Malcolm,
halfway through
won't
the
there be
day.
a load of boats there?
So it's getting dark, like night's starting to fall because you spent half a day looking for this cove. Do you want to
Right.
carry on look? Do you want to like camp, carry on looking for it, press on through the night, or do you want
I
to do
think we
something else?
camp
Yeah.
I
and then
suggest we
head to the
camp.
fort. Yeah.
Okay,
Camp
so,
and then fort.
so you all camp. Obviously, another day has passed, so it'll cost you all a ration.
I can't believe that Malcolm wouldn't be able to find this cove, so I'm confident it doesn't exist.
Yeah, we obviously haven't got there
To-
yet.
to be
It's
fair-
further than we thought.
Brother Lomas has got a point. This Brianna who you spoke to was just like, oh, I've heard a rumour that there's a cove. It might just be a rumour. There might not actually be a cove.
I'm confident it doesn't exist.
It's either that or Malcolm's rubbish.
Okay,
I mean, what can I say? I don't know.
so
He wouldn't put us wrong twice, not 2 days in a row.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible. Clearly, it doesn't exist. Damn rumours.
Okay, so you guys camp for the evening. You pass a fairly uneventful night. You sleep quite peacefully. There's the smell of like the salt spray in the air, the sound of like the gently lapping waves on the shore sort of lulling you to sleep. You all take various watches. Nothing untoward happens during the evening, and you wake up during the next day. Obviously the sort of like the solar event is still in play, so even as it gets to like daylight, it's not full sort of shining daylight, but it's noticeably got lighter.
Shame about that harbour.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Let's get to the fort. Anxious to see about, and we should talk as we go, by the way, as we decamp.
Okay, now it's up to you guys. Just to like lay this in front of you, there's two possible routes you could take. The one that's like directly north, which is like shortest as the crow flies, will take you through the outskirts of the forest, or you could go round it.
Yeah.
Which there's less chance of you getting lost, but obviously it will take you longer anyway.
I think we skirt. I think we skirt the woods.
Okay, so Malcolm,
Well, that's just. I mean, that's just. I'm throwing that out there. Obviously, our proficient guide will have.
Well,
Proficient.
I'm gonna be very satisfied once we find the cove in the forest, though.
okay.
It's giant.
So what do you guys
like
want to
a
do?
fort.
Malcolm, are you leading them through the forest directly north, or are you skirting around it?
No, I think we'll skirt around it.
Okay, so make me another wayfinding roll again. It's like a 1 on a d12 is a failure. You're grand. So you skirt round the edge of the forest, and it takes most of a day to get to the fort. So as you actually arrive at Fort Eastburn, darkness is just falling. So again, you'll all need to cross off a ration because effectively a day has passed. I'm going to make a quick cheeky roll to see if anything untoward happens to you while you're travelling. I don't expect it will, to be perfectly honest, but you never know. No, you're fine.
So, as we have traveled...
Yeah, feel free to talk about whatever you wish. You've got a day.
Yep. So, what do we want to do with these bandits in the woods?
I think we want to use them to apply pressure to the lords.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we want to do is try and put pressure on the lords so that they don't put pressure on us. And if we can, acquire some coin to help grow New Zealand at the expense of some stuck-up lords from Falcone, sure wouldn't the world be a better place?
Yeah, and these guys, they're set up in a Whalesong forest, so that's immediately between us and the forts. So if we got them on side, they're like these irregulars that are lurking in the forest. We keep them happy. They take care of our western boundary there, don't they?
Buffer.
Yeah.
Plus allies that we can call on should New Zealand come under attack, or should the worst come to the worst.
Yeah, I mean, probably you wouldn't want to rely on them too much for that, but I reckon if you give them a few coin to make sure that anything going through the Whalesong forest from our direction to their direction was unhindered, and anything coming the other way was getting heavily taxed and
Yeah, or anything that was coming from the cove to
ports.
maybe
yeah.
Because what we want is the stuff coming into New Zealand and coming up the river, right?
Yeah, we want people to go, oh, wow, New Zealand's a way safer place to go. Every time we go to the forts, we get jumped. Yeah. That's a really dodgy area. We should go to that much safer place, New Zealand, where there's no bandits.
But I won't be able to find a cove anyway, so that's ruled out. So.
Yeah, I mean, if Malcolm can't
That's
find
not
the
a problem.
cove, what hope has anyone else got? You know, they've sailed all across the open oceans and they get here and, man,
No
there's
cove.
no cove to be found.
Yeah, nary a cove to be found.
Yeah.
So they will think that we are brigands as well, because that's what I told them. Well, him, anyway, in the forest.
So what did you tell him?
Uh,
So what did Weimar say? What did you tell him, Weimar?
So I implied that we were also tax collection specialists, as they were, and cut from the same cloth.
Okay.
They are, as far as he was telling, and the read I got was that he was being as sincere as a man in the woods about to rob someone else could be. That they were down on their luck settlers that had wound up doing this instead of the sort of settler lifestyle that we saw in Deerson. And that makes for a couple of following ideas. Well, some ideas follow from that, which is they're desperate to a degree. And I saw a lot of this in the aftermath of actual, fighting on Rohaleen. And that means they're willing to do quite a lot. But that also means that they're quite unpredictable. You can't nail them down unless you literally do. And
yeah, that's how I see it.
So with that all in mind, how do we want to play this?
I think we need to find out what makes them tick. What are they after? What they've head out into the forest. They're clearly independent souls.
Hungry, always cold.
So those needs need to be met.
On the run, scared.
Yeah. So they need some kind of security. Perhaps if they could forge a bit of a territory of their own, that they could
put down some roots. Calm down a bit.
So if
we maybe invite them to New Zealand if they are that way inclined in terms of putting down roots and trying to.
What about the damaged village just the other side of the river?
That will take a bunch of rebuilding, I think. What do you think, Leopold?
But they are quite a small group, aren't they? Not
they are, but they
maybe. What about if we said to them, the forest to the west of the river, we won't make a claim to it, and we would respect that, the Whalesong forest, and because we can say to them, we want to set up some forestry and everything else, but our interests lay to the east, and we would support your claim on the Whalesong forest, and as much as we're able, we would counter any infringement on that, from the forts. We'd stand with you, and so you could forge this territory of your own within the forest. It just depends if they're interested in that or not. Maybe they're not. Maybe they just want to
they might want to operate in the shadow of the fort. Really.
Yeah, because I think our long-term plan has to be that goods come from Rohaleen into New Zealand and are moved on from there, so we can tax those goods, to tax those lords, and use that to put pressure on the lords, because all of their stuff will have to come through New Zealand. So I don't think we give up anything on the west of the river, right? I think what we want to do is, if they're keen to settle down, then I'm like, we definitely need more people. We need more people who can fight. We need more people who can shoot.
Maybe we just pay them. Maybe we just say, look,
Work for us.
You carry on doing what you're doing, but
because if we tell them that, look, we'll pay you to make it very difficult for anybody to get goods from the cove to the fort.
Yeah.
Right. In addition to anything that you find, right? We will also pay you and offer you protection and stand with you should they come looking for you.
Yeah.
But that 24 miles, whatever it is, from the cove to the fort is the only place that you should be taxing people.
So what we're saying is, anything that they like blag, any scams that they're pulling, they pull all that still. They keep all the spoils of their raids and whatever else. But we're just paying them to leave us alone and victimize as much as possible the other lot.
Yeah, and we can also trade with them, right?
If they need anything,
or if they need defense, anything like that at all.
Or you get banged up and you need to kind of seek some healing or whatever else, or you've got some old guys who just can't hack it anymore and they want to come and
or when the winter gets bad.
Whatever.
Oh, that will be a whole different deal at that point. That will be a separate negotiation once the winter happens, because that I have a feeling that might be a bad time.
So when you're old and decrepit, we'll have to renegotiate.
Oh, I don't think any of us will be old when that happens.
Okay.
We'll still be young and all beautiful once that snowstorm starts coming down. But truly,
well, that wasn't the actual snowstorm that I was referring to. I just thought, like, when the arthritis is playing up in their knee too much to be a bandit or whatever, and they wanted to kind of just
the winter of your life. Are you a poet now, Leopold?
Well, I dabble.
I like to think Leopold's like, I knock out the old ballad or two.
Occasionally spitfire.
Keep my hand in.
I like to keep my hand in with a bit of the old poetry. The odd ballad.
Yeah. Gotta keep yourself sharp.
Sonnet here or there, Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when their arthritis is playing up and they just want to do a bit of marching around the palisade, there's opportunities.
So we have this all planned now. What if once we go there they pull steel on us?
Well,
then we put them down and we find another group.
And if they don't pull steel on us, but they are truly reprehensible,
then we pull steel on them.
Are we in agreement?
So truly reprehensible, they're like just murderous toe rags.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding of this discussion is I've got no real worries about the redistribution of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't concern me. But I'm not keen on hiring murderers to do our work.
Murderers?
No. Sorry, if they're redistribution agents, then we will go into business with them.
Okay.
And if they're not, then we will put them out of business.
No, we are talking, give us your money and be on your way.
Like I say, redistribution is one thing, and I think everyone,
Render on to Leander what is Leander's, and etc.
Yeah.
So as long as they do the redistribution among that very small, narrow strip that benefits us, we can do business. And if they're, but like if like Weimar says, they're a little bit reprehensible and they're.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't.
Then.
don't want to just be employing people to be murdering people or.
Oh no, we don't need assassins.
No, I didn't get the impression they were psychopaths. I
No,
got this
no.
impression they're more opportunists.
They
just
are
wanted that to sit better with me.
right. They are people. I think I've got them on lock. I've seen this before. They are quite capable of being extremely reprehensible. The worst kind of thing a person could do. That could very well be their side racket. Who knows? But let's go. Let's see what we
Well,
can
perhaps,
tell.
if we can offer them some better conditions, maybe they could soften their approach and be a little bit more forgiving.
Let's give them a chance.
The blood comes off the blade, but not of a man, really. So there's something, and I'm fully aware of what that means, coming from a person who used to be in an army.
Do you think there's some of your fellow kind
Probably.
of soldiering types among their number?
Probably it's almost second nature once the banners come down and the pay stop's coming.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to shoot deer. Other people made different choices.
Mm-hmm.
A wise choice.
But we'll have to see. But just to make it clear, they might be actual monsters, or they might be desperate people trying to get gruel into their bellies. And sometimes it's hard to tell.
Well, let's do what we can to encourage them on the lighter side.
Okay.
Okay, so you have these discussions as the day passes. It's just getting to the end of the day when you reach Fort Eastburn. So again, that's going to cost you a ration for each of you. As you arrive there, I'm going to show you a little picture, which I'm hoping won't take too long to load. There we go. So as you approach Fort Eastburn, which is set amidst the hills just to the west of the western part of the Whalesong Forest, you can see it appears to be a wooden fortress with a large gatehouse surrounded by a wooden palisade wall. Through the gaps in the palisade, you can see beyond it appears to be a village of wooden buildings. Stationed, presumably, on a sort of gantry around the walls is an odd mixture of warriors. Some of them are wearing like leather armour and holding out the normal weapons you'd expect. Some of them are clad in the sort of furs and with slightly pallid, like bluish tinted skin of the ice nomads, and they're sort of like dotted around randomly. As you approach, in the darkness, obviously night's falling, a loud voice rings out and says, "Halt! Who goes there?" And at that point, I'm going to suggest we have our 5-minute break to use the conveniences, etc. We'll come back in 5 minutes and we'll carry on with you guys at Fort Eastburn. So, back in 5 minutes.
Oh, John,
Yes, mate.
just for reference, Brother Lomas is under the impression that this what we're calling an eclipse type.
Yeah.
He thinks that's a sign from Leander that this, returning of this creature from under the ice has sort of started. It's a long process, but it's like a warning, a sign.
Yeah.
But he's sort of keeping it to himself.
Okay, no problems, mate.
He's not particularly sure that the others will understand or, see eye to eye. But
Yeah, no worries. I'll make a note of that.
he's keeping it to himself for now.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, mate.
Just so you don't think he is ignoring it.
No, it's all good. Thank you for letting me know. I've made a note of that. So what's Weimar making everything that's going on at the minute?
About what we've been doing lately. The Whalesong Forest seems to be an outpost of the old magic, which is somewhat troubling. It's very close to us. And it's very interesting now to finally get to this side of the map, because this is where people are. We've been living in the frontier where people are not. So getting into the bigger settlements with actual forts and stuff, very interesting, because there's a lot of potential here, as well as, of course, super danger.
Yeah. And how about Malcolm? What's he making of everything that's going on at the minute?
I guess it's kind of torn between trying to get everyone to work together to fight against the smoking mirror, and also torn against his absolute distaste for snobby nobles, and trying to put pressure on them, and so everything is kind of like an opportunity to get people to, the common people to kind of work together and be able to rely on each other, and at the same time totally trying to shaft every single noble that he can. So somewhere walking that fine line between revolution and protection of innocence, and then try not to make Leander profit cracks at every opportunity, so as not to offend too many people.
Okay. So what about Leopold? What's he making of everything that's going on at the minute?
I think he's just kind of viewing it like typical humans with their they're kind of toing and froing, wangling this and wangling that. I think he's looking at the longer game. He's just sitting back thinking, the ancestors. He's kind of looking to the ancestors for his inspiration. It's like, probably if he thinks about it hard enough, this has all been done before, and it's the minute he gets a little bit of time to stop and think, perhaps he can draw some parallels and get some wisdom from the ancients. That it's just like it's he gets a feeling this has all been done before. It's just cyclical. if the ice melts, yeah, so be it. The ice melts, we'll just go back underground, and then when it all blows over, we'll come out again, and things will be as they were before. So he's not getting super excited about all that.
Okay.
Taking it in his somewhat limited stride.
Okay, splendid. So if we're all ready to jump back in, as I said, you're outside of the wooden walls and the wooden gates of Fort Eastburn. You've heard this voice ring out from one of the less savage looking guards on the on guard on the gate, saying, "Halt! Who goes there?"
They're just travellers in the night looking for a place to stay.
Are you armed?
Of
Well,
course
that's a
we're
silly
armed.
question, isn't it? Are we armed? We're walking in the wilderness. Of course we're armed. Bloody idiot. Come down here and I'll show you how we're armed.
Which is his way of saying, yes, we are indeed carrying weapons.
He says that's fine. It's not against Lord Eastburn's law to carry weapons.
Yeah, why are you asking?
in
Open the
Fort
gate.
Eastburn.
Let us in. Fuck's sake.
Would it be possible for us to...
Because you impotent tiny whelp, it is the law of Fort Eastburn that all weapons carried inside must be peace bonded.
Do you have the bonds, or... Because we don't...
Of course. If you'll just give us a moment, we'll open the gate. But first, what is your business at Fort Eastburn?
Quite literally
Arse
business.
All of a sudden.
Business and the procuring of medicine and other supplies.
Very well. Give us a moment, and he shouts down to someone obviously behind the wall that you can't see. He's like, so, 4 travellers require peace bonds for their weapon. Open the gates. And you hear like some of the voices like, open the gates.
Seriously, are we armed? Seriously, are we armed?
Then you hear the sound of like a huge sort of like wooden crossbeam like being like pulled back. That's obviously used to bar the gate, and you see like a number of guards like sort of manhandling these massive gates open. They creak loudly as they do so, and you can see there's like a few of these guards. Some of them are like obviously ice nomads, some of them are your more traditional sort of obviously ex-Rohaline sort of guards. One of them steps forward and he says, if you don't mind, I'll need to see what weapons you're carrying so they can be peace bonded appropriately.
Certainly. I have a sword and a bow.
Okay, he says you'll have to keep the bow unstrung while you're in Eastburn.
That's fair enough.
And then anyone who's basically got like weapon, you're like staff, Brother Lamus. They're like, it's a monk with like a stick.
You
They're
wouldn't
not-
part an old man from his...
Yeah, they're not fussed about it. They don't seem to regard like a walking stick as like a weapon. So, and they're like, he's obviously a friar. Like, look at him. So they're not bothered about it. Anyone who's got weapons in scabbards, they peace bomb them. Which, if anyone doesn't know, they basically tie like a cord around the top of the scabbard and around the hilt of the weapon. So you can't just like whoop your weapon out in anger. You have to like take a bit of time to like untie it. The idea is to stop people getting into an argument and just quickly being like, "Wah!" So you can still get your weapons out, but you just can't draw them like instantly in anger. So
What about this big ass hammer?
he said, the guard says, yes, that's a good point. You'll have to leave that at the guardhouse.
No way, bruv.
Then I'm afraid I can't allow you entrance into the fort, sir.
Then I will stop here. This has been entrusted to me by the dwarves, my ancestors, and it will not be parting from me. I will sit here and wait as long as it takes.
He sort of like looks around and he's like, and he says, of course I could write a special dispensation for you to carry this weapon with you if I were to classify it as a holy relic rather than a weapon. But obviously the writing of such a license would be a costly affair.
How costly?
He says, well, there's the paper to take into account, the inks.
How costly?
Let us say 10 gold pieces.
8.
Okay, at which point roll me 2d6 and you can add your charisma modifier to it.
Eight.
Okay. He says 9.
Okay, sold.
Yep. You give him the 9 gold pieces, and he basically takes out like a scrap of parchment, and he writes, "This dwarf has given permission to carry this hammer, for it is a relic of his people." And he passes you this bit of parchment. He says, "Keep this on you at all times, sir."
Very wise.
And I should
Very
advise
wise.
you that were this to be used as a weapon or drawn in anger, it would no longer be covered by the special dispensation.
Rest assured, this will not be wielding in anger whilst I am within the confines of this fort.
Right. Anger does not become him.
Very well, then you are all free to enter the fort. But please enjoy. I hope your stay is enjoyable and profitable at Fort Eastburn.
So do we.
So John, do they have a procedure for a pistol?
Oh yeah, you've got a pistol, haven't you?
Yeah.
He basically does the same spiel that he's just done about the hammer. He's like, "Oh, you need to like leave that in the guardhouse. However, if it were to be classified as an antique display piece rather than a weapon, it would be allowed in. But obviously, you would need a special license for it to be classed as an antique."
Right. Yeah. It's part of my.
I'm sure it won't surprise him, but you can blatantly tell this guard's like scamming money out of people to like allow them to take weapons into the fort. It's so blatant.
He is today. What he's up to tomorrow, that's a different story.
So you could write your own little parchment once we get out of earshot.
So
About 15 gold for both dispensations.
bulk.
He says,
Deal.
"Make it 16."
Okay.
Yeah, and again he takes out like another like scrap of paper, writes pretty much the same thing but puts like antique instead of holy relic, and again he gives you the spiel of like if it's used in anger it'll then be classified as a weapon, which would be illegal. So please keep it holstered effectively while you're in the fort and keep this on you at all times. And he gives you like the special dispensation.
Right. And
Buy 2 get 1 free.
yeah,
We got any others?
specials coming. like actual bulk orders. No, as we depart, I will just declare the fruits of civilization. Let us partake.
Okay, you head into Fort Eastburn. It's got all the sort of buildings you'd expect to see in a normal village. You know, there's a church, there's a blacksmith's, all the other sort of buildings you'd expect to see in a relatively civilized area. They actually look pretty well built, to be honest. Leopold, like someone must have like got some good craftsmen or put some serious money into getting these, but they look a lot sturdier than the Dearson villages you see. You can see although it's
that wouldn't be hard, would it?
yeah, I mean
That was
it's
shocking.
it's no impregnable dwarven fortress. Don't get me wrong, but like for humans, like with the materials they've got, this is pretty decent.
Yeah, it's not disrespecting the business of building.
Yeah, and you wander in. What do you guys want to do?
How late is it?
It's probably about, so I've said we're near the end of the day, so it's probably about sort of 10:30, 11 in the evening.
Okay. And we're to meet the guy tomorrow, right?
It was actually today you were supposed to meet him. This is the third day.
Okay. And he said he'd meet us inside the gate or near the gate?
He just said he'd meet you at Fort Eastburn.
Okay. So I think what we want to do is we need to find somewhere to stay, somewhere to put up our ponies, and then we need to kind of, I guess, check the local tavern and wait for our friend to contact us over beverages.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't take you long to locate what passes for a tavern in this. I mean, it's a bit sort of frontier style, you know, a bit rough and ready, but it is there. And it's basically just like a big sort of barn where like drinks and a bit of food are being served. And then there's like another barn on the side of it where like half of it is obviously used. There's like rails to like fasten up horses and whatnot. And then the other half is pretty much just like a communal sort of like dossing space where there's like straw down and whatever. And it's basically like, after chatting around a bit to various people, you basically find out that you basically chuck like a couple of copper pieces to like the landlord, and like you can doss down in the barn at the side as long as you don't cause any trouble. It's not like a a civilized like Rohirrim tavern with actual rooms and whatever. It's like I say, it's all a bit sort of frontier style.
Okay.
Okay, and since you're at the very end of the day, I'm going to ask Malcolm, can you please roll me a d12, anything but a 1, and you guys still here.
Hey.
Okay, no problem. So as you sort of head into the main area, and like I say, it's pretty much a barn with like a bar in it. It's nothing fancy. You can see that they're based. There's only like really one drink. It's beer, and the food is like jerky. What meats they've got? There's like a few animals wandering around, and like bread. And maybe a bit of cheese. It's all fairly baked. I mean, it's a lot better than like the like piss poor villages like Deerson have got, but it's still like very basic. It's not like your traditional sort of fantasy sort of like civilized tavern. But as you're sort of looking around and you're moving around, keeping an eye out for your contact, Weimar, as you're walking around, from the shadows at the side of the barn, you hear a voice go, "Tss." And as you look round, you can see sort of standing in the shadows, it's like with his like hood pulled over, you see Enos, the man you encountered previously. He's sort of like leaning against like one of the support beams, like in the shadows of the beamworks, and he gives you the old like.
And we're all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll get my companion's attention and jerk my head towards the shadows.
Indeed.
And proceed there.
Okay, that's absolutely fine.
So as everybody files off into the shadows, I like close it off. I'll be like the door to the shadows.
Okay, no problems. And as you head over to, again, these tables are like crude. They're pretty much like crates and barrels. You can see there's like a crate serving as a table, and there's a few barrels around it as like chairs. As you move over, you can now see sort of even like deeper in the shadows and wearing like dark clothes, like with a hood pulled almost down, concealing the face. There's like another figure sat at the table that like Enos beckons you over to. He sits down at the table and he's like beckoning you over.
Yeah. Over there.
Into the deepest of shadows.
Indeed.
I wonder
the
what shall
dankest
we
of
do?
shadows. Okay, so you all sit down, presumably. Obviously, you're sort of stood nearby, having a quick look around. To make sure there's no problems later on.
I'm not super good with the chat and everything, so I'm gonna hang back and just make sure that there's nobody paying any unnecessary attention to what we're up to. I'm making sure everybody's minding their own business.
Yeah. So at the moment, you don't notice anyone paying you particular attention. A few people look up as you come in. Obviously, it's like new people coming in, but they quickly like go back to what they're doing, like the chatting and the drinking and whatever. But no one. I'll let you know if anyone starts paying undue attention. But at the minute, you're golden. So
that's good. Yeah. I don't want any trouble if it can be avoided.
So the rest of you sort of sit down at the table, and Enos sort of like looks around and he says, "Oh, good. It's getting late. I didn't think you were going to make it."
We got lost on the way.
He nods and he says, "Yeah. Them woods can be tricky." He gestures over at the other figure on the table and he says, "Well, this is my boss." And the figure pulls back the hood to reveal what appears to be a fairly striking young woman with sort of long black hair that's like shaved at the sides. She has like furs around her shoulder, and leather armor under this like big sort of dark cloak she's wearing. She nods at you all, and then he says,
"Nice to make your acquaintance."
She smiles, but she doesn't say anything. And then he says, "Yeah, so you said you might have a bit of a proposition for us," says Enos. So I've persuaded the boss to like come here. So I bet you lay it out on the table, and we see where we all stand.
So
He says we can't hang around here too long. We're not exactly like on the guest list for Fort Eastburn, if you know what I mean. And as he says that, the woman just sort of like, you see like a bit of like a slight smirk on her face.
Mm-hmm. I say, "Oh, I see you. You found a way to procure certain licenses, though, to get in."
At which point, the woman, in a very sort of low, like quiet voice, says, "You only require licenses if you go through the front gate."
Very crafty. In any case, we have certain interests, both to the east as well as here. And
all right, says Enos.
while we, of course, met in the forest over yonder,
Yeah, that's right.
is that to establish a greater understanding of what is going on with you. Is the Whalesong Forest something you have a great interest in? Was that but a chance encounter, or is this a regular haunt?
Enos looks over at the woman, who just nods ever so slightly, and he says, "Well, given the sort of troubles we've had round here," and he sort of gestures around with his thumbs, you might say that's our current base of operations.
Right. So, a proposition then from us to you would be, should you be amenable to it, would be the hiring of your services to certain ends. Now, what these ends would be would be determined by your particular proclivities, which of course we would need to discuss.
Enos goes to open his mouth, and the woman like puts a hand on his arm, and he immediately falls silent. She leans forward, and again in this very low voice, obviously like trying not to be heard by anyone else, she says, I mean, you're sort of like struggling to like pick up what she's saying, Leopold, but you can just about hear it. She says, "Let's just say that I have a grievance with the people in charge here."
With the people, do you mean the person? Or is there a multitude?
Perhaps I should explain. Some time back, I was a servant to Lord Moses Eastburn in this place, and at that point, when I knew him, he was a strong, wise ruler who genuinely wished to bring the benefits of civilization to his to this place, to return it to something like its former glory. However, there is and like a look of distaste comes on her face. There is a man who serves as his advisor, a man by the name of Brannan. He is always at the side of Lord Eastburn, whispering advice and poison into his ears, and under the influence of this man, Lord Eastburn has become weak, feeble. His vision has become clouded by the tapestry of lies that Brannan weaves around him. Now, I knew that as a servant, there was no way that I would be able to convince the Lord that his valued second in command did not have his best interests at heart. So I did the only thing I could. I left, and I took those who did believe me with me. Since then, we have been surviving as best we could on the outskirts of the forest. it is not my wish to harm people who travel from the secluded cove on the coast to the fortress. However, we have liberated some goods in order to ensure our own survival, supplies, weapons, etc., that we could not get ourselves from the forest. But, and that I will not lie and say there have not been times when parties have been less than willing to turn over their goods and things have escalated to violence. But if a wagon train turns over their goods and what we ask for, we allow them to leave. It is not my intent to slay people who travel to Valconen. However, if I can make things difficult for Lord Eastburn and his Chamberlain, and also get my men what they need to survive, then that's what I'll do.
John, as I'm listening to this, I will glance at Malcolm, and while I'm looking at Malcolm, hand on the peace-bound hilt of the Sun Sword, I'm thinking as loudly, quote-unquote, as I can at the sword, and what I'm thinking is, I know that you did something before where I could hear someone else's thoughts, their thinking process. If you can do that, please do it now with this woman here. And I'm looking at Malcolm so that if it decides to do something with my body, it's as if I'm doing something. I'm talking to Malcolm or whatever.
Okay, so Malcolm, at the moment, what are you thinking?
Shit.
So what I'm thinking at the moment is two things, I guess. One is that this McCord and her people should move down to New Zealand to bulk up our support there and to not stay in the forest. And the second is that wouldn't it be a terrible thing if this Lord Brannon had his throat slit in the middle of the night?
So why might you basically hear that, but in like it's obviously Malcolm because it's in like his internal voice, yeah.
Okay, and I'm nodding at Malcolm and I'm thinking, okay, that's fine.
The sword's voice in a slightly exasperated voice goes, "Just look at the woman."
And I sort of close my eyes with a final nod at Malcolm, and I'll turn to my companion across the board.
Okay, so as you look at this woman McCord, you hear in her inner voice, she's basically a little bit suspicious of you guys. She's like, it sounds like they're genuinely interested, but it could be a trap set by like Eastburn's Chamberlain, Brannon, to like try and lure us into the open and trip us into a meeting here. She's like, however, you get the feeling that, as Malcolm quite rightly sort of predicted, and you predicted earlier on, maybe they're getting a little bit desperate, they're a bit short on supplies. So she's like, we might have to take this chance, but I need to reassure myself that it's the right thing first. But also as well, she's thinking, she's like, how much should I tell them about Eastburn's Chamberlain? Am I like sort of revealing my hand too much?
Taking too big of a risk here.
And she's sort of thinking about it, again, not in words this time, but almost like images in her mind. You get like an image, like a sort of split image of this sort of like quite stern, sort of like bearded looking like muscular man, sort of like sitting on a throne, and like people are around him and he's talking to them like benevolently and sort of whatever, and he's obviously decked out in the trappings of like rulership. And then it like smash cuts to, in the sort of Lord of the Rings style, like a feeble old man with like an overgrown beard, sort of like in a chair, sort of, and standing next to him is a very pale man with like some like extreme like mink fur around his shoulder and a robe on, and he's sort of like leaning next to him, and he's like basically whispering in his ear.
Greasy ass black hair.
and well, no, it's more sort of like a sort of like silvery, sort of like greyish sort of hair. But as he's like, obviously, this isn't like factual. You're sort of seeing like her image of him, sort of like in a visual way. As he's talking to him, you see like this black vapor like waft out of his mouth and into like the ear of the now feeble lord, who's like,
yeah. So as quickly as I can after like getting all this, I'll just ping the right hand man as well, just to check him if the sword is still on board.
Okay, so Eos is basically thinking like, oh shit, I hope I've not like made a mistake organising this meeting. It's like, if this goes pear-shaped, I know who the boss is going to blame for this because I've arranged it all.
It's going to be my ears.
Yeah, he's like, it's going to be like my ass on the line if like this all goes pear-shaped. So he's like, he keeps like glancing over at his boss and he's like, it seems to be going all right, but he's mentally like keeping his fingers crossed because he doesn't want, because you're just some people he met in the forest and he's persuaded his boss to come and meet you
in a haunted forest.
Yeah. And he's persuaded his boss to come to this place. So effectively, she's like a wanted person on the strength of like his persuasion. So he's like, oh, if it all goes Pete Tong, like I'm going to get the blame for it. That's what. And he's mainly worried at the minute.
All right. So I'll just think like, thank you so much, and this is extremely strange.
That's fine.
I'll let go of the handle.
Yeah.
And
the sort of inner voices fade away.
Well, I know, of course, my own sentiments towards what you have just said, and thank you very much for sharing this. I know, at least I think I know, what my companion here would say. I'll like sort of jerk my head at Malcolm. And I think I speak for all of us, indicate Lomas as well, and Leopold in the back. And I'll take what do we have to carry our? It's probably like leather bags, like small leather.
It would be like
bags,
little pouches.
For our money. So I'll take one of mine because I have two, and I'll put it on the table. It's tied with a leather string, and I'll just like push it forward, and it clinks, and there's 100 silver pieces inside.
You see her eyebrows raise,
and I'll just say that consider that a good faith gesture towards the cause.
Her eyes narrow in sort of like suspicion, and she says, now tell me, why would a group of people that I've barely met and hardly know offer me, come here to this place of my enemy and offer me a bag of silver pieces, 100 as you say, with seemingly no strings attached to it?
Well, that's to convince you to stick around and talk for what comes next. So that is yours for talking to us.
She nods and then says, very well, I will listen to what you have to say, but I suggest we do not stay here to do it. Every moment I am here, I am at risk. We need to make ourselves scarce. We have a small encampment, only 10 or so miles away from here, just within the outskirts of the forest. I suggest we adjourn there, and there we can have a discussion without so many prying eyes.
I'll give a small nod to Malcolm and Lomas. But yeah, I'll give the we should do this.
I'm going to just quickly whisper to that Enos, as I assume we're standing up. Do they have beer at this camp?
He sort of he's still a little bit nervous, but he sort of like chuckles under his breath and says, "Yes, we've liberated some drinks from some of the wagon trains."
Excellent. Let's make a move.
At which point, McCord says, it's fine. Just like to the air, like not to any of you. He says, it's fine. We're going to head back to the encampment. And as she says that, two people that like you've not seen at all, who are like hiding behind like the nearby pillars, just sort of like wearing cloaks similar to hers, just sort of like emerge from behind these pillars and sort of converge on where she is. At which point McCord says, I suggest you make your way out of the settlement and make your way around to the southeastern side of the wall. We will meet you there.
We'll be there.
At which
With
point,
peace bonds on.
she smiles a little. At which point they sort of, she says, we will head off first. I suggest you wait at least 10 minutes. If you have not had any sounds of alarms raised, then make your way out through the gate, make whatever excuses, your business is resolved, whatever you see fit. And then we will meet by the southeast side of the wall and we'll make our way to the encampment.
We shall do that.
So her and her cohorts get up and they head out of the door of this sort of barn-like tavern that you're in.
So, and I'll just like quickly sort of motion for everyone to huddle up, and we'll order food, whatever's on the menu. Probably some kind of, the eternal stew that they have.
Yep.
And we'll get bowls of that, and get a meal while we wait.
Yeah. Don't worry about the cost. That'll be a few coppers.
Yeah.
As the meat comes over, it smells like it's very highly sort of like spiced, and like there's a lot of herbs in this stew and whatever. And you expect that like the meat's probably like a bit past its best. They've just like piled the spices and the herbs in to like disguise the slightly sort of rotten taste of the meat.
The curry.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty much like someone's got meat that's a bit like sort of like 3 weeks past its sell-by date, and they're like, oh, this smells a bit rough. Chuck a load of curry powder and like thyme and parsley, and it'll be fine.
That was the origin of
That's
that
it,
stuff,
exactly.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's rat, isn't it?
When Weimar said we're going to get into a huddle, I thought we was going to be like 1, 2, 3, New Zealand.
Team Seal.
Go Team Settlement.
No, we'll like get everyone together. We'll get the table and get the food going, so we have a reason to be here. I'll like lay out the facts for Leopold because he was a little bit further away.
Yeah.
And I'll mention that.
I got the gist of it. I was listening in.
Right. Good.
Sounds quite promising.
It does. It's well, honestly, no one could have predicted this, and this is a stroke of luck. That I.
And as you say, stroke of luck, can you please roll me a d6, Weimar? Anything but a 1, and there are no sounds of alarm as your new allies perhaps are leaving.
Come on, praise Gale. There we go.
Okay, yeah. So you pass like the 10 minutes chatting, catching Leopold up, eating your rancid curry,
Slop,
drinking some of this like it's just like your bog standard like beer. It's fine, but there's nothing particularly like special about it. So you pass like 10 minutes. There's no sound of like outcry or like guards being called or anything like that.
That was quite a tense moment. Why am I not rolling a 1? That was.
Yeah, that only happens during the eclipse, so enjoy it. While
that was touch and go there for a minute, man.
I am one with the curse now, so it's fine. But once it passes, then we'll back to normality. But so
heart was in my mouth.
I think we have a chance here because these people will have a scope of knowledge that we could only dream of when it comes to the fort. If what she says is what I think it is, it's a lot of the staff went with her as well. That's going to be a big deal here. So I think let's try and make friends as best we can.
Yeah, we definitely want to get these folks on board.
So we want them to continue to operate up by the fort.
I think we want them in
Rather
New
than
Zealand.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we want them there. They will. They're fort servants. The forest is gonna kill them. So
Oh yeah, but you still want them to operate on these.
I don't
No,
think
I
so.
think
I
so.
don't
I
think so.
think we
I
just
don't
want to
think so.
go.
Giving
nah.
up on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just settle them there, and if we need brigandry, we'll hire someone else to do it, not chambermaids and butlers.
Mm.
Though, given all the things, they were prepared to put us down here, so that does speak to something.
Yeah, but how many warriors can they have?
Hmm.
Well, let us go find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say I'm in favour of bring them into the fold, promise them the security and the
Food.
fairness of
Yeah.
more freedom to kind of like pursue their goals, their own personal goals without the yoke of oppression that you get from these noble types with their chamberlains
and the dark sorcerers in the court
yes,
that we need to deal with.
Yes.
the dark dankness.
I feel like that was very important in this story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, let's get going.
Okay, so you guys make your way out to the front gate of the fort. Obviously, you've no problems going out because they're not going to tax you when you're leaving the fort.
Can we get a refund on that on the way out?
No
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, we can, but you
This
might
is-
not like our methods.
This is under 2 hours, like of.
Your peace bonds are like taken off by the guards, but there's no offer of a refund is made, unless you wish to press the issue, of course.
I feel that's probably the others to.
I've marked
push
his
that,
card.
but-
I've marked that geezer's card.
Yeah, it's probably like we could get a refund, but that would cost us. So
I'm not going to draw attention to myself. He's a mark. I've duly noted the tax. The tax is duly noted.
I don't think they will be able to draft you a document that satisfies the fact that you commit murder for religious reasons. I don't think that's going to happen. So we're better off just going.
Keep that for future, though. We'll be able to use that again.
Oh yeah. We already have the documents now that we come in. It's like, oh, look, I have my gun license. So
Okay, so you all make your way round to like the southeast sort of like side of the wall for the fortress, and as you get there, you see the two sort of henchmen, Eos and McCord, all sat there on horses, sort of seemingly waiting for you. McCord like nods as you approach. Then she, again in this very soft voice, she says, Our temporary encampment is 12 miles, give or take, away from here, and I've indicated that on the map for you. It is here.
Yep.
Well then, if there's nothing further delaying us, I suggest we head off.
Indeed.
Splendid. I don't want the. I don't know how much time we have before the owner of these horses realizes that they're missing, and they sort of start like, obviously like very sort of slowly, just like trotting off. So you guys are on like foot, so they're sort of like they're not galloping away because they'd leave you in the dust. So they're sort of just trotting away slowly, and they lead you once more back into the outskirts of the Whalesong forest. And like I say, after about 12 miles travel, heading through the forest, they seem to sort of like know where they're going. Obviously, you're following them, so you don't have to make any roll. You arrive at what appears to be a very small clearing that's obviously been like made fairly recently. You basically arrived at what appears to be a small woodland encampment. There's like high tents There's like evidence of like a couple of campfires going. Like I say, it's only a temporary sort of encampment, so it's quite makeshift. There's no permanent buildings. It looks as though it's been like made so that like if they needed to, they could like basically like ditch it or like pack it all up very quickly. And as you approach, you can see there's maybe 6 men sort of sat around in the clearing. You can see there's like a few sort of like wooden crates and various other bits and pieces that they've obviously like liberated from people. And there's a few people sort of like lifting up odd items, odd like bric-a-brac, nothing of terrible import, like talking about it. You see that most of them have a bow nearby. A few of them have swords, some of them have daggers. It's a bit of a sort of mishmash of weaponry, but they all at least have a bow. As your sort of like guides get there, McCord and her men sort of swing down from their horses and just like tether them up to a nearby tree trunk, and they walk back into the camp. McCord looks at one of the men who sat around. She's like, "Go and fetch the barrel that we liberated from that caravan the other week. We have guests." At which point this guy goes into a tent and he comes back out like rolling this barrel out like along the ground, and he sort of like gets someone else to help him like right it, and he comes out with basically what looked to be like, almost like they've just been like hand whittled, sort of like just little simple like wooden cups that they've presumably made themselves from like the wood that's around, and there's like a load of them are just like plonked down in the middle, and McCord and all of her people sort of like start sitting down like on the floor like around this campfire. There's no like real chairs or permanent furniture, and she just like indicates a space on the ground on like the other side of this campfire, which is crackling away as like the darkness is falling. And she says, "Please, said we should be safe here for the moment to have our discussion."
Yeah, plunk my ass down, and we probably have some kit. Well, actually, no. I only have a water skin. I suppose I'll start with that.
That's absolutely fine. As you're all sort of settling down and getting yourself settled in, one of the bandits comes over, like cracks open this crate, just sort of like hacks the like cork with a sword and like pops it off, and pulls the top of the barrel off basically, and people are just sort of like dipping their cups in it. It's a pretty reasonable but sort of like thickish beer, almost like a sort of like a Guinness or some other sort of stout, like a dark beer rather than the sort of like the watery stuff that you've been drinking at Fort Eastburn. And McCord says, "Please help yourselves to a drink, and then we'll discuss."
I'll grab hold of one of these cookser type drinking implements, and I'll be examining the craftsmanship before wading into some of that brew.
Yeah, the cups have been fairly well whittled. I mean, obviously someone's like not a professional like carpenter, but they've been fairly nicely done. Someone's obviously spent some time over it. You dip it in, and you've got this like this very sort of like almost like thick, dark sort of stout. You know, like it's that whole sort of thing of it. Like it's like a meal and a drink, that sort of vibe. You know.
Yeah, perfect.
As you're sort of walking over, can I just ask?
Ordered.
You know when you're carrying, Misery's End, your hammer.
Yeah.
Like how do you carry it on your person? Like where is it? Is it just like on your belt or like?
I reckon most of the time I just got it in my hand.
Okay.
But when it's not in my hand, that's a good question. It'd be super annoying on your belt, wouldn't it? So
Yeah, 'cause it'd be banging against your leg all the time.
yeah, it'd be like that's what I was thinking. I don't think I stow it. I think it's in my hand. If I had to stow it, I'd probably drop my pack. You know, if I needed my hand, I would drop my pack and lash it to my pack. But that is a rare thing.
Absolutely fine. So as you're sort of walking over, you're walking past McCord to like go and get your stout. She sort of like you see that she obviously like clocks that this hammer, and obviously it's a finely like crafted like
Yeah,
ancestral
yeah.
like frost dwarf warhammer, so it's like distinctive. She sort of looks at it, and then as you sit down with like your mug and you take a swig of your stout, she sort of leans over to you and in a voice says, "I don't suppose you'd be interested in selling that?" And sort of like nods at the hammer.
No. I don't wish to offend you, but I'd rather chew off my right bollock.
She says, "Well, I wasn't expecting you to provide after drinks entertainment."
I'll just wink. I'll just like wink her.
She smiles. At which point she says, "In which case, that's fine if you do not wish to sell it. I understand. I don't suppose you consider, in the spirit of this new like friendship, I don't suppose you consider doing me a small favour. I'm sorry. What was your name again?"
I am Leopold Stavish at your service. Of course, I jest with some ribaldry. This is an important heirloom to my people.
She says that's fine. I live in a forest with 12 wanted men. I'm used to the humour. At which point she leans over to one of the men who's like next to her and she like whispers something to him. He goes into a tent, comes out, and he's carrying like a warhammer, and he passes it to her. At which point she sort of like leans over, sort of holding it out to you, and she says,
right.
She says, "I don't suppose you'd do me a small favour and tell me what you make of this, Mr. Stavish."
Yeah, I can. Oh, yeah, I'll certainly take a look for you and see what I can divine.
Okay,
Does
so
it look pucker?
yeah, you have a look at this warhammer, and it's clearly of like dwarvish manufacture. Like it's got like dwarven runes, like not like magical runes, but it's got like dwarven runes and stuff like, you know, dwarves, they like to write things on everything. Everything's got a legend to it, so they're always like writing things in their own runic language. So as you're sort of looking at it, can you roll me a d6, please? Okay, so as you're looking at it, you see it's very finely made, not as finely made as yours, and it doesn't have all the like sort of embellishments, because yours is like an ancestral relic, whereas hers is like very fine, like more than you'd expect, like a normal dwarven warhammer. It's got more carvings and more sort of like engravings on the handle and whatever than you'd expect to see, just like a normal, like we've made a hammer to fight things with. But yeah, it looks pucker, and like I say, it's obviously of dwarvish manufacture.
Yeah, so this is a fine dwarven made hammer. I feel like there's more to the tale, but perhaps it's beyond my experience. I think you have something special here.
She says, well, I'm sure we'll get around to it, but perhaps when myself and your friends are discussing the Chamberlain of Eastburn, you will remind me of your interest in this hammer, and perhaps I can tell you its story. As much as I know, at least.
I'm intrigued as to why you stay in this area. We come from the west, and there would be you'd be welcome there.
I think you mean the east.
East, sorry, yeah, the east.
The other west.
The other west.
She says, "Well, I'm sure that will be revealed as we have our discussion." And then obviously the rest of you guys have sat down and got your drinks and whatever. And she turns to she sort of smiles at you, Leopold, turns to the rest of them and says, "So, let us discuss." And she sort of holds her hands out. "What is it you wish from us? And she sort of like takes out the pouch of coins you've given it to, and like passes it to one of the men who sort of like is like, like, "Oh, you just like randomly passed me a pouch of like a serious amount of coins." He looks a bit surprised, but he like takes it away to one of the tents. He says, "So your generous offer has got our attention and our goodwill for the moment. what is it exactly that you want from us? I'm not gullible enough to believe that you are simply travelling around giving away money to people.
No, in fact, money is somewhat hard to come by,
Indeed.
but we aim to make it more available in these parts as well. We would like to offer you a place away from the forest to live, make a living, eat, and be safe. There is a settlement to the east that my friend here already referenced, and we call it New Seal Land. You might have heard of it, maybe not.
She nods. And are you suggesting that we settle down in your New Seal land?
We would offer this to you. We would invite you to stay there and get away from this, which is clearly not what you wanted out of your life here.
At which point she sort of holds up her hand and then she says, let me just, before you go any further, and it's not because I'm not interested, but let me explain something. Although I am the leader of this band, I do not wish to set myself up as a lord, as those in Fort Eastburn do. Any decisions we make here, we make together. And as she's saying that, she sort of like, she puts her fingers in her mouth and like whistles, and you see like another sort of 6 people who've obviously been like on watch sort of like emerge into the clearing, raising the number to like an even dozen of people plus Eos and her. And she says in a sort of louder voice, she says, "These guests have a proposal for us. I have suggested that they put it to you, and then we'll make a decision." So
probably at that point, Leopold jumps up. He's probably a bit startled at that. He jumps up and he's like, "Whoa!" Looking around.
She sees you do that, and again in like a low voice, she says, "Those of us who are not an adept at hiding ourselves don't tend to last long, Mr. Stavish." And then she turns to Weimar and says, "Please make your proposal to my men, and then we will decide between us what is to be done."
Oh boy, I'll put down my water skin. I'll get up from where I was seated and I'll just sort of spread my hands a bit and say, my friends, I am sorry, but I do not have a similar pouch to give to each one of you. So the one will have to do for now.
You hear someone at the back go, "That's all right. I reckon we can do all right on 100 silver pieces for a while."
That's good thinking. We come from a settlement to the east called New Seal Land. And we are, well, I suppose making our own way along with the rest of the village, the settlement. We have a palisade. We have arranged for the services of a watch, a militia of a sort. We are expanding into trades as we can. We are making preparations for the coming seasons. And having heard your story, which it sounds quite harsh on yourselves, and also for no other reason than it is the decent thing to do. We would like for you to have a place away from the forest, away from sleeping on floors and the underbrush and the snow, and to have a chance to make something of this life here that we all now live, away from the darkness of the fort, which we have also been told of, and the danger that it poses to you whilst you linger here, and also the danger of the forest, which you are probably more familiar with than I am, because we come from the east. The forest is no place for people to live, and eventually, I do not say this to demean you, but it will kill you. It would kill any of us. And we would like to give you a chance to avoid that fate. And we would invite you to New Zealand, and we would be your neighbors.
And we can still sort out Brannon.
And we can deal with the fort as we can with due time.
Okay, so yeah, you lay this all out to this like assembled group of bandits. Can you please roll me 2d6? You can add your charisma modifier and an additional +1.
Yeah, the +1 will come in handy.
Yep.
+1, so no.
Wasn't it supposed to be?
It was 2d6, mate.
Oh, 2d6? Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just like, oh, charisma check.
A reprieve. A reprieve.
That's
Yeah.
all right.
That's the old curse there.
Them old cubes.
Yeah, it's
Old
the
bones.
eclipse.
Yeah, it's the eclipse.
There
so
you
here we
go.
9.
Okay. So, she looks at the assembled bandit crowd, and McCord says, "So, what do you say?" And as she says that, she like draws like a small dagger from a little sheath like on a belt, and you watch as like all of the bandits like draw like little knives, basically. And as you watch, out of the dozen, 7 of them like throw their daggers into the ground, so they stick in the ground. The remaining of them just put them back in their sheath. At which point she nods at them all, and the ones who throw them into the ground like pick up their daggers and like resheath them. And she says, "Well, it appears you have."
Leopold's having a super bad day at this point. What?
It appears.
What's with all the knives, man? Just put your weapons away.
McCord leans over to you and she says, "It's simply a way of showing whether you are in favour. If you are, you throw your knife into the ground, or whether you are not in favour, in which case you resheath it." It appears.
I was a little bit worried there for a while because my skill is with the bow, and it would have been a terrible show if you had actually used those knives. I'm glad of the result, whatever it is.
She says, "You seem to have persuaded my men. However, we cannot settle permanently in your settlement. However, we do need a place to resupply. As you said, we have people who become ill. We would, on occasion, welcome a bed of straw rather than the hard earth of the Whalesong forest. Might I suggest a compromise that we perhaps use your settlement as a launching point for our operations? Obviously, while we are within your settlement, we would of course aid with any defence of it and help in any way we possibly could, but we still have our business with the fort to deal with, which would mean we would not be there all the time. Would that be acceptable to you?"
I'll glance at the rest of us.
Oh,
I just nod back.
I feel happier that we've made the offer, and these folk are able to benefit and still retain their independence. I can respect that.
Very well then, in which case it is settled. And she looks around at all of her people and they sort of nod. And she says, "Well, are there any questions you wish to ask me?"
Once the business with the fort is concluded, what is your plan?
It is my hope that once Brannon can be dealt with, that Lord Eastburn would return to something resembling his former glory, and once he had he had seen the poison that had been poured into his ear, we would be able to return to the fort. But how long it would take to unseat Brannon, I don't know. At which point she leans next to Eos, who's sat on one side of her, and she says, go and get the stone. We should show them. At which point he goes into a tent and he comes out with like a block of stone, like someone's taken a stone from a building. And he puts it down sort of like in the middle of you guys so you can all see it. And on the top of the stone you can see sort of like carved into it is the word traitor, but it's not like carved into it. Like you can't, like you're looking at it, Leopold, and you're finding it really curious. You can't see any like chisel or tool marks that you'd expect to see if someone had like carved it into stone. It's almost like someone just like got a pen and wrote it, but like into the stone. And she says, when I was escaping from Fort Eastburn, I was confronted by Brannon and some of his inner circle. He shouted and denounced me as a traitor to Lord Eastburn, as his justification for the no doubt unpleasant fate he had planned for me. This stone that you see here happened to be beside me as he denounced me, and as he spoke the word traitor, the word appeared on the stone. I don't know exactly what it means, but I know it means something, so when we escaped I took it with me. They say Brannon takes strange journeys into the mountains at the centre of the Whalesong forest, and that he speaks to spirits there. And she says, he also has a creature with him. I've seen it, and Eos has seen it with his own eyes. Eos nods. It is a beast rather alike to a wolf that one might see in any of the forests of Valconan, but it has a strange hide, and its fangs cut through metal, steel, wood, as though they were nothing. And although it resembles a savage beast, it is never far from Brannon's side.
How often does he go into the mountains?
It varies. I have known him to go 2 or 3 times in a month. Other times he does not go at all. If we could work out his schedule, then we would have dealt with him by now.
I say we take that stone and crack it on Brandon's head.
My friend here is a poet and has a flair for the poetic justice.
That would make a fine song to sing. The song of cracking the stone on Brannon's head. The traitor stone. I will call it this song of the traitor stone.
McCord sort of like takes out a pipe and like thumbs some tobacco into it, and as a drag of any, she says, I would very much enjoy cracking this over Brannon's head. After all, he has cost me my home, such as it is on Valconan. He has caused many people to believe me a traitor to the Lord I served loyally, and before we even came here.
My song will be a hit.
I do not know what devilry Brannon is involved in, but if we can find a way to end it, stone or no, then that is what I will do. It is my hope that by preying on the merchants that travel from the cove to the fortress, that we would inconvenience them to such a point that eventually Brannon himself will be lured out of the fortress, and once he is away from the safety of the fortress and all of the guards, we could then perhaps deal with him in a more permanent fashion.
He's definitely up to no good. He's up to no good.
She nods and looks at you, Leopold, and then looks around at the rest of you and says, I'm not a brigand or a murderer, but mark my words, there is some devilry afoot with the seneschal of the fortress. I do not know precisely what, for I have no skill in that regard, nor would I wish to have. But there is something unnatural about the man.
Did he come here with the Lord?
Yes, but he was not the same when he came here. He was a minor figure. He was not yet the main advisor to the Lord. He was a minor figure, some sort of third son of a minor noble house or something similar. I don't know the exact details, but he was a normal man, and then over time he changed and he seemed to gain more influence over the Lord until now. Brannan's voice is the only one that the Lord hears.
And what about this creature? This beast that he goes about with, this hairy beast. When did this come on the scene?
She says, I do not know when he obtained it, but perhaps Eos can tell you more about that. And she looks to Eos. He nods and he looks a bit uncomfortable, but he pulls back his sleeve, and you can see he's got some old wounds from a deep bite mark on his arm. And he says, I don't know what manner of foul, devil-sent beast it is, but we barely managed to escape. I mean, I fear if McCord hadn't helped me out, then it would have taken my arm clean off. It was lucky. I had a fever for many days afterwards from the injury. It was lucky I survived at all. Yeah, but the only thing I can really tell you about it, other than its appearance and its power, which McCord has pretty much told you already, is that I heard Brannan call to it and order it to attack, and he called it by the name Kalak.
Well, there's certainly something extraordinary in the mountains for him to, whatever he does there, for him to abandon the very seat of his power, which is the fort.
And all the safety therein. He's going right out into the...
Yeah. So he's attending something more important than the fort and the guards and the Lord in the mountains.
We need to follow him. When he comes out, we need to follow him and find out what he's up to.
At which point McCord says, there is one other thing I should tell you about Brannan. When we were fleeing from the fort, my first thought was to put an end to Brannan as we left. So and she sort of reaches down and picks up one of these bows that's lying on the floor, and she says, I am a good shot with a bow. I'm practiced. I've spent many years hunting, and I fired an arrow directly at Brannan's heart, and I tell you true, the shot was true. However, at the last moment when it would have pierced his black heart, the arrow seemed to turn as though possessed of a life of its own away from him and struck the floor rather than his chest.
Sorcery.
Should we examine the mountains to see if we can find where he goes, if we don't know when he's going to leave?
I think his power is hidden in the mountains, and that is where you need to search. And probably before the two of them join, as together they could be a force to be reckoned with. Maybe divide and conquer.
She nods, says, I have considered this, but we are barely able. There are only 14 of us in all, including myself and Eos. We were barely able to escape from Brannan. What chance would we have against something that is potentially mightier than him?
But you would have us.
Perhaps you need not concern yourself with it. Perhaps you You pull back now and take some rest. Let us look into this matter. Let myself and my companions. We mean to head north, but perhaps we could head into these mountains and have a look around and see what we can see before we head north.
Now we've heard rumors that they're fighting over something. Is that true in the mountains?
The two forts.
Yeah.
She says, yes, there is a pass that allows easy passage through the mountains, and once from the east to the west, and once more civilization comes to Valconen, it will be a strategically important place. Both Eastburn and his fellow lord up in Fort Kersey both wish to lay claim to the pass and build a watchtower or something similar there, and it is causing a great deal of tension. There has been a number of skirmishes between their men, but it has not yet escalated into open violence. But both of them seem to have a belief that whoever controls this pass will have a great deal of power and influence once more people come to Valconen.
What's your opinion of these humans in Fort Kersey? Are they any better than this rum lot?
She says, I must confess, I've never been to Fort Kersey. I don't really know any of the people there.
We have heard that the Lord Kersey is likewise associated with creatures of evil.
She says, make no mistake, I do not believe that Lord Eastburn is an evil man. Once he was a just and honourable man. If he has any flaw, it is that he listened to Brannan in the first place and allowed him to poison his mind.
There is a chance, I hope you realize that, there is no drawing the poison out of him.
I realise that, but it's no lie to say that at the moment Brannan is the actual ruler of Fort Eastburn.
Yes.
That the Lord barely does a thing, but that Brannan has requested it. Even if Lord Eastburn cannot return to his command of the fort, I would rather see someone else take up that mantle than see a devil like Brannan in charge of the fort. And after all, as we've said, eventually more people will come to Valconen and there'll be more civilization here. I believe that if this rot, this canker that is Brannan, is allowed to fester and to set in, that when civilization is restored here, he will be so deeply embedded and corruption so deeply rooted that it will spoil whatever comes after. And once he is deeply embedded, we will never be able to get him out. And his corruption will spread to others.
But Brannan is also against Fort Kersey.
He seems to be, yes. He certainly seems to be advising Lord Eastburn that it's in his best interests to seize hold of the pass, and before the people of Fort Kersey can do so.
And before Brannan, was Eastburn still at odds with Kersey? Is that no change?
They were still at odds, but the violence behind it has escalated. It has gone from a disagreement to something that to a powder keg that with the smallest of sparks could be set into a roaring blaze of violence and death.
And when Brannan goes into the mountains, does he travel to the pass or does he travel somewhere else?
I believe he travels to somewhere north of the pass, from what I understand. But I'll say I've never actually followed him into the mountains. But that's what I hear. There are still a few people in the fort who do not believe that I am a traitor, and we do receive small amounts of news and rumours from them when we can. But it is perilous for myself or any of my recognisable men to enter the fort.
So just to be clear, is he going into the Grey Heights?
She gets a dagger out, and she draws like a very sort of like rough map of the sort of area that you're in, basically. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find an icon that I can just copy there.
Just because I'm realising we've got two lots of mountains and we could be at cross purposes.
She said in the Whalesong forest, though.
Did she? Right, okay.
Okay, so you see this icon I've put here? That's roughly the area she's suggesting that he goes to.
So the pass that they're fighting over is down here as well? Because I was
It's
imagining...
sort of here.
Right, okay.
What's the disrupted area marked on the map, out of interest? In
The disputed area, that's what they're sort of
dispute.
arguing over. The area they want to build a watchtower in.
Right. So that's not directly linked to the pass, then.
Yeah, that's to keep an eye on the pass, isn't it?
Yeah, you see there's it's basically
It's all connected. Okay.
To control the pass and the
Mountains,
traffic.
okay.
Obviously, as the conversation goes on, what she seems to be suggesting is as more people travel to Valcoden, obviously more of the forest is going to be felled.
Yeah.
And when that happens, like the mountains are going to be a strategically important location, and both of the sort of lords of the fortresses want to like lay claim to them. Because obviously you'll be able to like tax people who travel through the pass, stuff like that.
Okay. So should we go and check out this location? See if we can find what attracts Brannon to this place?
Yeah, I mean, we don't just want to sit and wait for him to turn up, do we?
Nah.
No, we want to take the initiative with him because it does appear that, well, we don't know the details of it, but he can speak you into his ally. So we want to be the actors in this with him.
Yes, yeah, it does sound like there could be a growing curse coming from this mountain. It could grow and could infect more. So it's definitely a big threat to the area and ultimately us.
So about that mithril up to the north, if we go and check out this place, we could still then wander north from there.
Yeah, and we also wanted to call it the Fort Kersey too, right? To see what's going on there.
Yeah.
So we could go from there to Fort Kersey, and then from there into the looking for the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Right, so off to the mountains, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Let's do that.
we'll settle our accounts with the brave band in the forest.
Okay.
Get them sorted out with the important detail. While we're talking locations, witness our sketch of the area. Is there something you could add that we have not? Because we have been in the east for the most part. Is there more that you are aware of, having lived on this side of the lake and the mountains? And I'll sort of display
Like that cove that they raid.
There's apparently a mystical cove that
shrouded
that
from
hides
view.
from the sight of mortals.
So all these big ass ships that vanish.
They say that a ship made from the fingernails of dead men docks there.
Okay, she says, Yes, I know the cove you're talking about. Either it's a bit further along the coast than you seem to think. She like say, "Oh, we think it's here," and she says, "Actually, it's here."
There you go, Malcolm. See, you're not as bad as you thought. Just needed to carry on walking, mate. It's not your fault.
At which point she says, "There, one other thing I can possibly tell you. In the forest, maybe 12 miles to the northeast of here, there is a woman who lives in a small hut. She is a retired soldier. She is set wanting to be free of the political machinations that are going on between the forts. She has set herself up a small farmstead of sorts there. We've encountered her, and wanting nothing from her, we left her in peace, and she seemed amenable to that. Helen Gordon is her name."
And we will stop by and see if she might also like to become allies with us and trade with New Zealand.
She nods.
Indeed. Well, we thank you for your hospitality and look forward to seeing you in and around New Zealand, and hope for all the best in your endeavors, and we will definitely get back to you if we find something. I think it's fair to say that this was rather more than we thought we would find. When we set out here, we set out here with thoughts of trade and perhaps politics. This goes rather far beyond that.
She nods, and then she says, "Yeah, yes, I'm pleased with the outcome of this." And she indicates on the sort of roughly drawn map where this woman lives.
I will draft a document of a letter of recommendation to their character and whatnot that they can present to the watch at New Zealand, and it, explain to her, just present this with my recommendations for your safe conduct into our hometown.
Thank you. If any of my men are heading to New Zealand, I shall make sure they carry this with them.
Yes, yeah. Once you get to be known there, it won't be a problem. But this may grease the wheels and aid in your initial visit, should we say, your presentation, should the need arise.
Thank you, Mr. Stavish.
You're welcome.
At which point he says, "Well, if our business is concluded, I suggest you spend what little remains of the evening here in relative safety. My guards, and like you see, like the people are sort of fanning out once again to guard the perimeter. You'll be as safe as you can be within the Whalesong forest here. So I suggest you relax, enjoy the rest of this liberated drink, and relax for the evening. After all, tomorrow may be full of dangers and perils, but for tonight we can at least rest easy amongst new friends." And she sort of like lifts up her like wooden cup.
A fine idea. To your good health.
Hear, hear.
Okay. And as night falls on the bandit encampment and you all drift off into a sleep with none of you having to take watches because the bandits are doing it, that is where we are going to draw a close to this evening's session. So thank you very much to my wonderful players for playing. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, cheers, John.
Yep.
And obviously we'll be cracking on with this in a couple of weeks' time, with you guys heading north into the mountains and stuff like that. But for now, thanks for anyone who's watching this in an hour in the future. We're going to end the recording here, so catch you later.